Documentary short form. A structured presentation with dramatic impact of an event, individual, or situation of current cultural and historical significance, or a creative in-depth treatment of a topic presented in a factual and informative manner. Can be filmed by one person or more. Must have debuted during the contest year. Higher weight will be given to documentaries with stellar photography and videography that elevates the presentation without distracting from the story. Short form has a runtime of no less than 10 minutes and not to exceed 30. So yeah, we're back to higher weight on visuals. Pay a little less attention to the editing. Obviously, still important as far as our overall package. But yeah, here we go with the first one.
Train, come right here. No, you stay. Right,
this is the group of kids that everyone counted out. This is the group of kids that people thought wasn't going to make it.
Almost all of them know someone who's been affected by gun violence.
All together. Ready?
Just being able to see them just like being successful and growing and me being able to lay that foundation for them, I think that's what keeps me, it keeps me going.
It's not just a football team, that's our family.
Hit! Get your knees up. Ready? Hit! Where you going? You know what I'm saying? If Darius go this way, you getting outside of it.
Darnell, Coach Nell Hamilton launched the Indy Steelers youth football team in 2005. His goal was simple: mute the echoes of gun violence so children can learn a better way.
I grew up right here in the Butler, Tarkington neighborhood. Tarkington side, I mean, you can go right around the corner and, you know, it'll be shootings, robberies, you hear police sirens, you know, it's alleys and glass and people just, you know, it's a bit more of a struggling side. Some people wouldn't really understand where some of these kids, what some of these kids are going through. Some people are really hungry out here, you know. Some people are struggling, it's simple as struggling in the classroom and don't want to do classroom work. Some people are struggling with, don't even know where they're gonna lay their head at night. It's a lot going on out here. It's a lot.
What we see is a lot of kids that are growing up with experiences that you wouldn't think they would have at 12 and 13 and even 10 years old. So they are adults with adult experiences in little kid bodies, and they are just having to deal with a lot, whether it's a death of a loved one or alcohol and drug addiction in their family, or they've had to move a lot. Almost all of them know someone who's been affected by gun violence.
For Coach Nell, I think, at least what I see, is he sees himself probably in every single one of those kids. A lot of the coaches do. Coach Nell had a good education. He was really talented, and he got in a little bit of trouble after high school, and I think he knows where he could have gone with football. He did go to college and play ball, but he sees that same potential in these boys. And if they have somebody, not just a parent telling them what to do, but somebody to say, like, I've been you before. I've been there, I've walked this path. Here's where it ends, here's where you could go. That makes such a huge difference to these kids, because again, it's not just a football team, that's our family.
When Coach Nell finished high school, he earned an athletic scholarship to Western Kentucky. But while there, he ran with the wrong crowd. He was kicked off the team and lost his scholarship for having guns in his car. He would spend 18 months in prison.
Let's go. Let's go, let's go.
After my career was over, I think that I could grab the youngster's ear, you know, and kind of really, because I done been through what you done been through. You know, I done did this, and your struggle is you know, is familiar to me.
I got Tom Brady on.
Just as the team relies on Coach Nail and the other coaches, the players rely on their parents.
Stop being bad.
But oftentimes, players only have one parent at home.
Get me down.
You ready to get down?
Yes.
Go. I'm single, Dad, and I got 4 kids, you know what I mean? And they're babies, and I'm an old guy. You know, I ain't a spring chicken no more, you know what I mean? But they kind of make you, having them kind of makes me feel young, you know what I mean? Because they keep me going. We just, girl.
Come on. Let me see.
It's just their mother, me and their mother were together at a time, and we had 4 kids, and she just wasn't doing the right things. So the court gave me custody of the kids. You want what?
Tea.
Some tea?
Yeah.
Well, it was addiction, you know, chemical substance abuse addiction. And so, therefore, you know, that was the reason that I got the kids.
So you could turn this on.
Antonio, he's too sweet, too nice. I mean, he wants everybody, he wants to be friends with everybody.
I had John Cena, but somebody stole me. But it's okay. I can get another one.
No, and he's the type of guy that, because I tell him I always be positive. You know, always be up-spirited and positive. I tell him that, and he is. He's like, no matter what's going on, he's like, come on guys, we gonna win the game. No, it doesn't matter. We're down right now. He's out, like, he's on the sideline peppering everybody up all the time.
Yeah, I want it.
Well, he wanted to play football, and we seen them practicing over at Tarkington. We went over there, and then Coach Nail and them talked to them, and I said he wanted to play. He said he wanted to play, so I put him over there. He's been over there the last 4 years, playing with the Steelers.
Fastest man off the ball wins the battle. So you're always trying to be the first one off the ball. As soon as you hear it go, or you see the ball move, that means get off the line and get moving.
Okay, my son named, they call him Mouthpiece on the football team. He got the name Mouthpiece because he can never keep up with his mouthpiece. I have bought in Antonio, I don't know, 12, 13 mouthpieces. And he never knows where they're at. He loses them. He probably don't know where it is now.
Where at? Where your mouthpiece?
I don't know.
See that? You see I lied? He said he had it, didn't he? See what I'm saying?
I don't know where it is.
So don't tell the story, tell the truth. If you don't know, just say you don't know.
I don't know where it is.
I bought you 9 mouthpieces. That's why they call you Mouthpiece. Because you can't keep a mouthpiece. Go on.
I'm ready.
Don't give you another one.
I think there's still jambalaya,
Oh,
still sausages. So
I have 4 sons.
And we have 3 boxes, right? And
My oldest is Tyree. My second son is Tyler. Third son is Tyson. And my youngest is Titus.
scoops will we need to put in the pot?
This is maybe our 3rd season playing with the Indy Steelers. So we came out, we met Coach Nail, Coach Durrell, Coach Reggie, Coach Chris. And, you know, they know that struggle of being a young black male in society and just trying to figure out where you fit in. I saw a lot of anger, I guess. They were going through a lot of adult situations that, you know, I was just thinking like, wow, like me as an adult, I would be freaking out by now. I wouldn't know what to do. But here it is, this 10-year-old, this 9-year-old, this 11-year-old kid are experiencing death in the family. They're experiencing losing loved ones to gun violence. When I seen them come out to the field, it was almost like all of that didn't matter. It all went away when they came on that field. They were a team, they were a unit, they were able to practice together, they were able to say, hey, this is somebody that cares. You know, the coaches would shake their hand every day and ask them how they're doing or how's school going, or
things like that, just to be concerned. And I think a lot of them were looking for someone to just care.
No time off today. All hard work, all right?
Yes, coach. Hard work on 3. 1, 2, 3. Hard work.
Now, defensive end. There you go. Turn up downfield.
Well, I was married, but now I got divorced from my wife. I just raised my kids on my own. Raise them, take care of them, cook, clean, everything. Do the whole works.
You got it. Oh, you want dark color, mama? This color cool right here.
We just did it. We started, I started doing what I got to do. It's kind of rough, but I can handle it.
Yeah, he's a good father, and he do a lot of stuff for us, and he help us out, take us to school, go to the doctor, help us, and make sure we all right. I love him. Yeah, I love him. He's a good father.
Just the internet, so when he come hook the internet up, they family, my family, people on the streets to see me with them and stuff, they tell me I'm a good father. That make me feel good. Let me know that I'm doing good for my kids. Yeah. Yeah, being a good father to him, what I gotta do for him.
Make sure you got your keys in your pocket.
Got it. Went on over there and she was laying in the floor in the hallway. And they said they couldn't bring her back, she was gone. They said there wasn't nothing they can do.
On February 24th, 2019, the mother of Kevin's 2 children died of a drug overdose.
I guess they said she took too much of the stuff to just shoot a train and just overdosed to you. Yeah, they said the fentanyl got her.
Okay, but sit down right here.
I just talk to them all the time. Let them know they had a good mother, and they know that too. They talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time. They was talking about when they see little red birds, they say they go mama right there. Every red bird they see, they say they go mama. She watching over us. Yeah, they miss her. I miss her too. I love you.
Losing your mother, for little Kevin and Kiasia, and then Kevin losing, his kid's mother, that's hard. That's a hard thing.
Right now, Father, because now she's gone right now, Father. The memories don't take.
We're like a family. Most of the football team like a family. We all go to each other's house. The kids go to each other's house to play. They have parties. They're all together at the parties whenever they do. And I thought, and seeing all the team there was like, and it made, and when he seen the team there, I'm quite sure that it made them feel good too.
I was glad. I was glad they came.
It'll be a rough one.
Yeah, it is.
You got here all day. You go home, clean up, cook.
I'm so gonna be
do some
tired,
laundry.
man.
But yeah.
I think these fathers are doing an excellent job, and I think they don't get enough praise. You know, they don't get enough praise for what they're doing. Anything that we can do for them, you know, that's like one of those, that goes back to the money issue. I would never go to them and be like, oh, the registration fees needs to be, no, you know, they're coming, he's gonna play, your daughters is gonna cheerlead, and you bring them over here to us, and we got them.
That's what it's all about. We're supposed to be a support system for everyone. It's not just my kids. It's not just, you know, oh, it's the neighbor or whoever. It's for us. We're a community. We're a team. And we're a team on and off this field. So if you need a hug, if you need a call, if you need a pat on the back, if you're having a graduation ceremony, if it's a birthday, you know, we make sure we get all our kids cupcakes on their birthday. Like, it means it's $12 to me. But to them, someone remembered my birthday.
You cleared this bar, what'd you do? You stood straight up, right?
On the practice field, the Indy Steelers learn about football, and they learn about life. But some lessons are as unfortunate as they are necessary.
Y'all losing is, y'all not on that whistle. Y'all supposed to be firing off, okay?
It was just a ordinary day. We're out there practicing. It's maybe like 60 or 70 kids out there at the time. And we hear commotion over at the basketball court, and then we just hear shots, boom, boom, boom, boom. And after they shot, I guess somebody shot back, you know, so it was like multiple shots. It wasn't just bang, bang, and then it was multiple shots, like it was crazy.
Both Caleb and Caden were on the field that day. Caleb, my oldest, was practicing with the older boys, which is a lot closer to the basketball courts where it happened. And I just remember in all of that, you know, you look up and you're searching for your kid along with all of these other kids and just trying to make sure there's nobody on the ground.
When you hear gunshots, your natural reaction is to run, you know, so trying to explain it to a 8 or 9-year-old kid, it's like, well, we don't want you to run, you have to get down. You got to get down, drop down, you know, and see where the shots are coming from. It's not something that you want to explain to a kid.
My daughter told me my friend just dug down because she was with her little friends and stuff, and they said they was real scared.
It was a beautiful night. There were so many kids there. But the craziest part of that night to me was when I asked the kids if they were okay, and several of them looked at me and said, oh, that's normal. That's not normal. That shouldn't be normal for them. They're going to a park to play football to stay out of trouble, and the trouble comes to them sometimes.
Go!
Go, John. Inside, John. Go, go, go, go, John. Go, John.
2 more quarters. Do not take your foot
In
off the gas.
2015, trouble came to 10-year-old Deshaun Swanson.
Deshaun, I've known Deshaun, they call him Little Man. I've known Deshaun ever since he was like 6 years old. He grew up right across the alley from my house today.
Deshaun, a player for the Steelers, was killed in a drive-by shooting while attending a memorial service at the home of a neighbor.
Listen up. Hey, first, I want to thank y'all for coming out, man, and recognizing Deshaun.
He was probably
Deshaun's life, man.
the littlest guy on the field with the biggest heart. He played for 2 years, and then the year that he played, the year that happened, was in September, and it crushed us.
You know, it's been 4 years, and I can honestly say with me, you know, I definitely miss him every day, and you know, it's a rough situation.
His memory certainly lives on. You know, each of the kids there has a story about him or a story about his life, and you realize, you know, with Deshaun right down the street from the park, that's a reality for these kids. And that's what I think sometimes normalizes it. They see that stuff. What is the solution?
The Indy Steelers are much more than just a youth football team. They are a bright light through the darkness of gun violence.
The Indy Steelers is a family. It's the family of that neighborhood. And they get the shot at a better life. I mean, that's what the Indy Steelers are all about. It's not about winning a championship. Yes, we do that. And yes, we're good. And yes, you know, we get those accolades. But it's about so much more. It's so much more than football.
They're not just at home bored. They're not seeing what's going on in the environment. They get a chance to take like 2 hours out of their lives to go and have fun. You know, some of these kids go through stuff at home that they shouldn't have to go through, and that's their only time to just go and get out and get away from it. So I think it's very important, and you know, it needs to stay as long as it possibly can.
This is my dream. My dream, hear me, Lord, this is my dream. Let me hit the lottery, put some money in all my kids' bank accounts, so when they get up, they can go to college. All of them get degrees, and I want to just be good citizens. You know what I mean? You know, be good citizens, be good workers. Go get your education, and be the best you can be.
I always tell them, I always say, y'all gonna thank me when y'all get big. Y'all gonna thank me. You know, they always tell me that, Dad, whatever happened, Dad, you stuck with us. You was always there for us. I'm hoping, you know, and to let me know I'm a good daddy. They'll tell me they love me.
Let's go, Steeler Nation, let's go.
Just being able to see them just like being successful and growing, and me being able to lay that foundation for them, I think that's what keeps me, it keeps me going.
Okay, but we're doing good, guys. Doing good.
Those Steeler coaches have a lot of heart. They do, and they love those kids. I mean, you can almost see that it's more to them than just this game. It's more to them than just, you know, football, because trust me, we've lost a few. But the ones that we win mean so much more to them. And it's not because, oh, we got a trophy or we have some title or some status. It's because this is the group of kids that everyone counted out. This is the group of kids that people thought wasn't gonna make it. The heart and soul of that team is caring about those kids. It's not just the sport. The sport is the reason we probably get together, but the reason we stay together is because there's a love and a bond there that can't be broken.
One second, hold on. All right. Let's start with Raquel.
Awesome. I really liked this. I felt it was a really beautiful balance of not shying away from like personal hardship while maintaining the storyline. I loved the perspective of so many single fathers as well. That's not something that's usually shown. I like that the kids were interviewed. I felt like it was very balanced, like it went very personal and then also just went right back to the story very fluidly. And it's a really great story. I really enjoyed this one.
Nice. Thompson.
Definitely echo everything Raquel said. I thought some of the interviews were really nicely lit. They really leaned into kind of a darker look, a little bit more drama by highlighting the subjects and making the background fall off into darkness. There was one of the little boys who you could tell was lit near a window, and they kind of underexposed it, and it just added a drama to it for me. I thought letting the long shot in the funeral home play was absolutely incredible, and made me want to cry. Just living on that moment was incredibly powerful. Yeah, I loved it.
Nice. O'Neill.
Yeah, I think first impressions, I think I saw some of the interviews that were so dramatically lit, and I was like, oh wow, this is a statement piece right here. And then it goes back into a little bit more of the texture of the realities of what these families are going through and the lives that they're living and leading. And I think it struck a really nice balance of not exploiting that, but also still showing the reality of it. Again, like Nathan had mentioned, the funeral home shot, I mean, that was just heartbreaking. Really intimate moment, but I felt like you're almost in the room, but by staying back and not like moving around to get the close up of the face or the tears, it felt respectful, which I really do appreciate, but it also still hit like you were in the room with them. And yeah, I guess like my only kind of hiccup was the sporadic pieces of narration that kind of came in intermittently throughout the piece. I just wasn't sure if that was necessary or if there was another way to do that. It kind of jarred me a little bit.
Rhea.
Yeah, I mean, from a content perspective, this was just a stellar piece all around. It was emotional and the narrative was really strong. The interviews were really amazing and intense and emotional. From a visual perspective, I really appreciated the style of this and the sort of the rawness of it. The style, I think, is probably different to anything we've seen so far, but it matched the subject matter and the stories that were being told. So it was totally appropriate, and I just thought visually it worked really well. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll move on to the next one. Judges in the chat here on Zoom, I'm dropping another Google spreadsheet. I'm adding all of the entries on here. This is just for you to reference. Since we have 16 to go through in this category, feel free under your name just to kind of put an asterisk, just the same way as you're taking your own personal notes. If you want to go ahead and if you want to log that here as well, if that helps. I'm just trying to keep it organized for you as we kind of navigate through these pieces just because they are longer. And then, yeah, we can go to the next piece.
Ніякого перемир'я нема тут яке перемир'я, як вони бомблять.
На протязі цього року дуже велике загострення. Знову перехід міни.
Це жахливо. Я б сказав, що війна це асоціація з смертю.
Війна. Одним словом, війна. Розслаблятися. А яке тут життя? Воєнне життя. Війна. Одним словом, війна. Пиляка, кров, болото. Недоспані ночі. Нема, примерно, от зараз. Нема. От недавно наших 3 поранених. Це для мене було найважче, коли Володю. Коли той снайпер застрелив. Тоді важко було. Це саме важке почуття, коли товариш нема. Його застрелили на моїй землі. Чого він має помирати? Він не має помирати. Люди гинуть. Війна є війна.
Поки тихо, спокійно, але тиша напрягає дуже сильно. Поки тут не побуваєш, не зрозумієш, дуже важко. Психічно важко, морально. Напрягає сильно дуже. Тиша, іноді навіть руки трясуться в ночах. Нормально, в принципі. Можна воювати, якщо це так можна сказати. Ну, бувають, в ГП прилітають воги. Страшно, коли воно бахкає над головою. Ні разу не пожалів, що я пішов в армію.
Що ти, Ярик, як тебе справа?
Хавку би получив. Да, макарони з тушником, дуже вкусно.
Пам'ятаю, коли почалася війна, я сидів в школі, власне, у мене був урок української мови. До нас зайшла вчителька з української мови, сказала, хлопці, російські війська зайшли вже в Донецьку та Луганську область, почали захвачувати наші території.
Так, жили раніше, коли був СССР, такого розуму не було, що може бути війна з Україною з Росією.
Ще пам'ятаю з дитинства в школі, я саме більше боявся війни і думав, що ніколи нас це не застане.
Дальності до ворога варіюється від 50 до 150 метрів. Неможливо спокійно вийти, з усіх сторін ворог тебе бачить. Як він нас контролює, так і ми його можемо контролювати. Противник постійно лише старається провести провокуючий обстріл.
Рослинність досить понівечена, так як ведуться постійні мінометні обстріли. І зараз зеленка, коли спала, ускладнилось пересування на позиції. Небезпека являє собою ведення стрільби снайперами. Enemy 100 метрів. Let's go! Це була міна, вибух міни тільки що був. Це ближче. Що? Тварини відчувають, коли такі. Знову перехід міни. Міна. Чули? 3 місяці тому у мене народився син, я їздив додому на 5 днів. Більше після того я не бачив, досить тяжко переношу це, але дуже чекаю повернення додому та побачити свою сім'ю, свого сина. Вони мене також чекають вдома. Це для мене є як підтримка, так і мотивація.
Кожна людина звикла жити в нормальних условиях. Тут нормальні условия так не можна создати, але принаймні, щоб було уютно, чисто і тепло. Оте ми сьогодні робимо. Головне тепло, зима настає.
Необхідно
Що
є.
умови хороші.
Світло є.
В 15-му такого не було.
Ні, тяжко, в таких условиях, і сирость, і холодно, і... це ж не вдома просто, що, розумієш, що це ж польові умови, вважай.
Людина привикає.
Так, звісно, привикає людина. До всього можна приспособитись. Так. Це може 57-й, що може теж. Я планую відпустку, так, десь, може, на свята, отак, якісь відпустки буду. На Новий рік, хотілося б. Скучаєш, звісно, до дзвоночку за дітьми.
Коли у нас є вільний час, кожен займається своїми справами. Може на футбол поїхати, можна додому подзвонити, фільм подивитися.
Ти якось поринаєшся в інший світ, починаєш займатися, починаєш бігати, веселитися, перестаєш думати, що йде війна і що тобі знов треба вертатися в ці окопи. Найперше, коли приходиш тут, починаєш більше цінувати життя, навіть не своє, як іншого побратима свого.
Є плани відкрити, після війни відкрити якийсь свій бізнес. Лежить душа на даний момент до равликової ферми.
Але я би сказав, що бойовий дух все з роком та з роком все зменшується і зменшується. Через те, що немає результату і не чіткі цілі. Чи все-таки ми будемо йти забирати території, чи вже зроблять тут лінію розмежування, кордон і все останеться так, як зараз є на даний момент.
Кожен день майже йдуть прострілки, кожен день працює їхня артилерія майже. Наша країна воює, а деяке населення, яке до цієї війни нічого не має, забуває про це.
Be careful.
Вони стали більш нейтрально ставитися до цієї війни на Донбасі. На те, що, от, наприклад, в Луганську чи в Донецьку загинув наш військовослужбовець, або там почалися обстріли. Коли йдеш спати, я би сказав, приходить багато дурного в голову. Починаєш в один момент якось можеш жаліти, що не сталося так, інакше.
Основная задача, то, что мы делаем, это работать непосредственно на линии. Люди выходят только там по какой-то крайней надобности. Ни к чему не привыкаю, тоже страшно, где-то слышишь эти звуки, а как можно привыкнуть? Мы можем выехать непосредственно, попасть на место, где там или обстрел произошел, или пострадали люди.
Все разбежались. Это мы, старики, деваться некуда. Кто знал, что будет война? Правители наши виноваты. А что мы? Мы пешки.
Ну что рассказать за войну? Война как война. Это очень страшно. Страшно было в подвале сидеть, прятались. Наша улица вся разбита. Да и нашему дому попала. И я желаю, чтобы когда-то это все кончилось. Хочется увидеть мирного неба. Не хочется слышать этих разрывов. Хочется спокойно спать.
Ну вот отсюда взрывная волна ударила по дому.
Постреливают, особенно в ночное время. Ну, бывает вечером, с утра. Жена, допустим, моя, я зацепил, чем-то ударил, она вся начинает дрожать. Ей показалось, что это выстрел. В нашем доме 16 квартир, но остались жить только мы здесь, с женой. Больше никого нет. После 8 лет войны мы думаем так. Лучше плохой мир, чем хорошая война.
Я вообще, завтра дембель вообще-то, а?
Завтра дембель. Завтра їду додому. Ну як відчувається? Іноді тоскливо, тому що оставляю пацанов, і не тоскливо, тому що за сім'єю теж соскучився.
А що раз будеш там спрашивать тебе, як було на війні? Що їм скажеш?
Я на такие вопросы никогда не отвечаю, и, просто тот человек, который воевал, он никогда не будет говорить то, что он действительно там воевал и действительно что-то там, допустим, убивал. Я, допустим, ухожу с армии, потому что, у меня есть девушка, мы хотим сыграть свадьбу, на это все нужно деньги, и в армии денег ты не заработаешь просто.
Росія знову нарощує свої сили з нашим кордоном недалеко.
Я би хотів сказати НАТО і Європі, перш за все, якщо ви нам хочете протягнути цю руку, все ж таки потрібно наважитись на це і зробити якісь певні рішучі кроки.
Думаю, що війська будуть збирати, я не знаю, навряд чи. А може і будуть. Якщо будуть, дамо їм нормальну відсіч. Все буде добре. Если что-то серьезное, то я знаю то, что я вернусь, там парни вернутся, там.
А Росії хотів би, кажу, ще раз задати таке питання, навіщо вам це? Навіщо вам знов ці тисячі смертей?
O'Neill, only because I feel like you're staring right at me.
Staring into your soul. Wow, what a powerful and timely time to be viewing that. Visually compelling, just kind of following these soldiers on the front line, hearing their voices, obviously, we're reading it, but what a great idea to, have an entire piece, just voices at the front lines, and to see the diversity on the front lines. The grandmother stood out to me, and I was just like, wow, like you don't think of that at all. It was a different perspective to offer. I think at the beginning there was this kind of calm, almost suspense, and eventually kind of build up to this moment where you had that hint of conflict, the shelling that started to occur. Yeah, I don't really have any like critiques as far as editing or anything like that, because I just feel like that is what this piece was intended to do, was as far as just documenting and shedding light on what those conditions are and what those people are experiencing, and I think it accomplished that pretty powerfully.
Thank you. Raquel?
Yeah, I definitely want to echo what Nathan just said about the diversity of the experiences. I really enjoyed that it wasn't just about the soldiers, that it was also about the community who that front line essentially crossed. And it was very cinematic lighting. I feel like there was like some still like lingering shots that almost looked like it was like about to turn into a feature film. The ending also I felt was very poignant, obviously, for right now. I love that it ended on a question. And it was just, it felt very tight. It felt tightly edited, just tight all around. Like there wasn't a moment where I was kind of like, yeah, like it was good. I really liked it.
Priya?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly grips you from the beginning, just because, you know, these conflicts are something that we're all thinking about. I thought it was very compelling. I really actually appreciated the choice to not have any kind of narration in this, just to hear from the people themselves. They kind of give you the context at the beginning with title cards. And so just, I mean, the interviews were so compelling. I could have listened to these people talk for forever, and to just hear their perspectives without sort of any outside like producer influence in terms of like narration, I think was really smart. I thought it was expertly produced. I really appreciated the color and the style, the color scale of like the outside scenes, especially, you know, the grays and the blues and the greens. It was almost kind of like evocative of what you think of as like Cold War, or even World War II, or, you know, World War I, when you see in films, or, you know, when you're reading about these types of things. So there was that very overt creative aspect to it as well, which you know, is credit to the producers and the shooters and the editors. And I agree with Raquel's assessment of just really smart editing on this. No critiques from me, just overall a really strong piece.
Mr. Thompson?
Yeah, it was lovely. I love the texture. Just to kind of echo some of Priya's notes on the color and the texture, you know, I think a lot of the shots just felt almost like photographs. There was one shot in particular that was like a wide shot of a soldier standing in some really selective light, and they cut away from it kind of fast to like a close up. And I was like, oh, please just leave that up. Just like, it was so gorgeous. And also some of the light, or some of the shots of the villages. I know there was one where there were a lot of like phone poles, and it looked like everything was dense and overgrown. I mean, it just felt like such a forgotten place, yet they didn't forget to talk to the people who were left behind there. You could tell that the crews must have really dug to find those people who were left behind. And I thought those perspectives were particularly interesting, you know, mainly the elderly people. I also loved how they represented the full scope of life: cats, dogs, goats, cows. It wasn't even just human beings, it was all of the animals, including human beings. And they represented a lot of different life forms, which I think is validating.
Yeah. I'm going to reread the first part of this description because I feel like it fits perfectly. Documentary short form, a structured presentation with dramatic impact of an event, individual, or situation of current cultural or historical significance. So, yeah, all those things. I'll hold the rest of my comments till the end, but let's go on to the next piece. Do you guys need a break? Do you need a 5-minute break or anything, or are we good to keep rolling? All right, let's do it.
You know, it was just sad because we knew what was going on in residential schools and what the priests and the nuns were doing.
We all knew they were there. It's just now we have the official number. Now we have proof.
Who beat you up any chance they got.
You do not care about the mass murder, the mass rape, the mass genocide. No!
Of us experienced kids disappearing. We'd ask each other, where did so-and-so go? And we sort of realized that, you know, there is something dangerous and bad about the boarding schools. When we were at the Alberni Indian Residential School, we had to surrender to whatever the supervisors demanded of us. Don't speak our language, don't sing any songs. They even said, don't write home. It was a very oppressive, destructive schooling. Who beat you up any chance they got. We had the most notorious of the supervisors who molested countless boys, and I was molested by him once, I remember that. And yes, it was sexually very depraving, I could call it, you know. So when we left the boarding school, we had no identity, or we didn't belong in this world. So we left the boarding school, went to East End, Vancouver, and drank ourselves to death. Grandpa said that. You go up there to be quiet. You go up there to meditate and pray. I didn't know why, but now I'm realizing at 81, he meant that I will find myself. And that's what these kids have done. My people are here peacefully. Some of the police are prone to violence, and they love violence. And I think that love of violence has only done to our young people retrenched and strengthened our values. And we ain't going nowhere. So have a good evening. And supper time.
Yes. You consider what it would be like to have strangers come into your home, kick down your door, rip your children out of it, and to never see them again. You're proud to be part of a group that helped to genocide hundreds of nations. Everyone says Canada is so nice and polite, but it's all under the surface. No one within the Indigenous communities is shocked. We all knew they were there. It's just now we have the official number. Now we have proof. The genocide that the RCMP took part in, they would go to the homes alongside the priests. They would knock on the doors or kick them in. They would arrest the men, beat the women, and steal the children.
You know, it was just sad because we knew what was going on in residential schools and what the priests and the nuns were doing and like how many children were being killed. I got news that they found 751 children, and I just felt it. And I called my mom and she said, my girl, they found 751 on our reserve, so those are my relatives.
These lands have never been bought or sold to the crown. Meaning you, as settlers, you do not care about the mass murder, the mass rape, the mass genocide. Myself and Whaletail, we've actually sacrificed our beautiful car to be a part of a hard block. Now that red dress, first of all, symbolizes the missing and murdered Indigenous women and men and children that go missing. When we try to tell the government system about what happened, they would blatantly laugh in our face. They would say that we are liars. We put our bodies on the line because these trees can't.
Couldn't breathe properly because they're on top of me. And they're on my chest, so it's completely wrong because it's my own land. So it's not even, they're just taking me, physically taking me off of this.
They don't know they're humiliating a person. They're depriving their own sensitivities, lowering her into a non-human state and destroying the humanity in themselves. And of all things, I can't remember how to say, pack the wood in or go get a bucket of water. Simple child stuff. Yeah, like Wastuakak. That's, where are you going? Wastuakak was, where have you been?
In the residential school, what would happen if the teachers caught you talking in your language?
Usually in your hand the first time, and that really hurt with I don't know what it was. It was a stiff leather strap, kind of like a bludgeon or something like that. And then the second time you got much the same but more count, bigger count. And then the third time you would get strapped, you would be on your bum, bare bum. You have to lean over. Then on the fourth time, you would get strapped in front of the boys in your dorm. The federal government are starting to realize that their separationist, racist policies are now working against them, because a lot of First Nations are starting to realize, hey, I'm a person. I'm Pachidat, or I'm Gitskan, I'm Wet'suwet'en. We are pushing ideas that we are part of this earth. We are people who seek and find our own spiritual freedom in a forest that logging companies don't want us to have.
We don't have much the old growth left. There's like so many species in the ocean that are dying, they're becoming extinct. And I have children, my children will be mothers and give birth to other generations. And, thinking about 100 years from now, what would be left?
Settler and colonial people, wherever they go, they extract and they take and they take and they don't care. They have no relationship to the land, and they make us dependent off of their land extractions. And then they say, oh, this is on your land, we'll pay you money.
In other words, industry is in denial. That denial system has been filtered down to our chief and to our local indigenous politics. And so that is what I'm trying to tell my chief and council, but they're all thoroughly brainwashed.
So it's really comes down to, the benefits of forestry resources today. 15 years ago, we had no say whatsoever in the forest industry, no revenue coming out of the territory. Today, that's slowly changing. Is getting the correct information on how much old growth is left in the territory, I think, is the first move. And letting the people, the rightful owners of the territory, decide how much logging is going to take place in the territory. Not anybody else than like the Rainforest Group, right? They're here to stop old growth logging, all old growth logging.
I know from within my own community, the agreements that are made with forestry or resource extraction, it basically keeps the carrots dangling over the people.
In the end, our land, it's raped, you know? And like that's like why I'm here.
Indigenous peoples would say this is our land, you know. It was never ours, like a personal thing that we can own. So we are caretakers of this land.
We have to love our earth, we have to love our mother. And when we do that, we wind up loving one another.
Start arresting. Okay, you're under arrest. You're under arrest.
We're dealing with a militarized force as unarmed, peaceful civilians. They'll use intimidation, they'll use threats, and they will like continue to just harass, right? It's all designed to wear us down.
They don't want us to be sovereign. They don't want us to make our own decisions for our communities.
The genocide never stopped. The oppression never ended.
Our boarding schools were systematically geared to letting us die. They were the death squad of the First Nations in Canada.
At least they're found, you know. At least they can be buried properly, and that ceremony can be held for them so that they can go home, you know.
Coming out of 7 generations of illness, of abuse, and we are that generation. We are those rainbow people, those that to break those cycles. I'm here to heal and protect the earth, and whether the government likes it or not.
If we save, and when we save Fairy Creek, this world will start saving its soul. I think that's about it.
This is gonna be a tough category. Rocky, we'll start with you.
Do it. I found the visuals to reflect the emotions really beautifully. I felt like it was very dark throughout, kind of somber, and I really felt like the visuals went with what was being said very well. I also loved the shots of them, of like just like flying into nature. I don't know if they were drone shots or not, but I thought they were really beautiful. And again, I loved the note that Priya made in the last one, because I noticed it again here, where there wasn't like a narration. It was just from the people's voice. And that really stood out to me as well on this one.
Priya?
Yeah, I'll keep this one short because I have no critiques of this. I thought it was really well produced and really well shot and edited. Yeah, I mean, I agree that with Raquel, the style of the way that they shot this really matched the story. I thought the interviews were really strong, and again, I really appreciated the interviewees sort of driving the narrative of exploring the topic. I mean, I'd read a little bit about these, residential schools, but I've never seen any visual pieces on it. So again, it was also quite educational and totally culturally relevant and important to conversations going on today. So yeah, overwhelmingly positive. No critiques for me.
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I like the tone of it all. It's like filming in the rain. that's not a fun thing to do. So you have to kind of commit to that. And I think it was nice, and it added to the texture. I mean, the shot where the camera was somehow tucked into all that brush right near the open window, with the girl screaming out the window, was like, first of all, like, how did the camera even get in there? Seemed like a lot of work. So that was pretty memorable there, that they went to those depths to get that shot. I definitely felt the heaviness of the oppression that these people are feeling, and how much they take it seriously. I did feel like it was pretty one-sided. There was one guy, I think from maybe one of the alternate organizations, who kind of just said, deforestation, we're actually just trying to harvest the trees, and bring the money or the resources from those trees back to the community. I felt like it might have been nice to hear from some other type of authorities to just give some like wider context to what was going on. I think that would be my only critique, because it did talk about a lot of different types of oppression. And at first I was a little bit confused. Okay, is this going to be about the oppression of the school system in the past, or is this about deforestation? So it jumped around a little bit. I thought there could have been just a little more context, like from the other side, to make it more balanced. But.
Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I agree on all those points. I found myself getting a little lost in terms of, what was the main focus of the story, as it kind of delved from one issue to the next to kind of springboarded. But I also understand, from an Indigenous perspective, a lot of these things are interconnected. So it's hard for people to kind of just silo it and not think about anything else that's going on. I think the visuals are great. The editing was great. Producing was great. Opening shot, it was just set this tone of like, this is ominous, and you're going to be in for like a visual treat in terms of, what this story is supposed to make you feel like visually. The elder that they spoke to, who was kind of the thread throughout the entire piece, he was a soundbite machine, and I could just like listen to him all day long, because he was a storytelling master himself. And I think that really helped. That probably is what gave them the direction of how this story went.
Thanks. Yeah. We'll go to the next one.
Real quick, judges, I just want to make sure, but just all the three documentaries that we've seen so far, they are all in for consideration, correct? None of them were disbarring or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I think these are all good to go.
All right, perfect. Just want to check. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nos van a matar. No hay guerra en la que no haya muertos.
Ha desaparecido mucha gente, han muerto compañeros. Yo creería que a mi hijo lo mataron a golpes.
O sea, lo que nos estamos haciendo es matando entre pobres.
El paro continúa. Este país tiene que cambiar. Nosotros somos el pueblo, que está cansado de esta dictadura que se hace llamar democracia.
Dice que Simón Bolívar pues nos libertó del yugo de España, pero pues en realidad siempre ha habido una élite que se ha mantenido ahí.
Después de Haití somos la segunda sociedad más desigual de América Latina. Cuando tú tienes una sociedad
donde el 42% está por debajo de la línea de pobreza, estás ante un estallido social.
Acá siempre hemos vivido en un país que huele a sangre. Acá vivimos en el país más feliz del mundo porque si no nos matan.
Es una sociedad donde se ha resuelto las conflictividades políticas con muertos.
Porque esto es un narcoestado paramilitar.
La violencia es brutal. La gente sale a la calle en parte contra esa violencia. Tenemos varios casos de muchachos que han sido detenidos por la policía, que se ha registrado con videos sin discusión, que son capturados por la policía y subidos a un carro oficial y después han aparecido muertos.
Mira, Duan tenía 17 años. Él sale esa tarde a llevar a la novia y de ahí ya no regresa más.
Esa noche él desapareció en medio de los gases lacrimógenos y apareció muerto.
El día siguiente yo lo que hago es irme a medicina legal. Me dicen que no es mi hijo, que no me preocupe. 1 mes y 5 días de angustia mía, de buscarlo. El sábado pasado me dice, aquí hay un cadáver que asimila ser su hijo.
Entendemos el dolor de lo que es un compañero cuando...
Para mí, ellos sabían que era mi hijo. Desde el comienzo. Con el fiscal, él empieza a leerme, a decirme que es la causa de muerte de Duan, que es ahogamiento. Mi hijo perfectamente sabe nadar, que él tiene como la nariz partida, en los brazos tiene como golpes, en las rodillas también. Yo creería que a mi hijo lo mataron a golpes. Para mí fue eso.
Solo puedo decir que yo le había prometido a todo el grupo que no iban a matar a ninguno con horror. Lo prometí y ahora le prometo a esta familia y le pido perdón, pero le prometo a esta familia que vamos a hacer cambiar este país.
Ya todo bien, ya lo es.
Una cosa importante es si las protestas pacíficas sirven de algo. Cuando la gente aprende que bloqueando una calle, presionando a las autoridades, consiguen un resultado, entonces la gente opta por la violencia.
Que nos encontramos en desigualdad de condiciones, en desventaja de armamento. La policía ha usado munición letal contra nosotros. Nos han dado a entender que a ellos, al gobierno no le importa negociar.
Si el Estado utiliza la represión como lo viene haciendo, pues no puede esperar precisamente que las primeras líneas se porten como ingleses tomando té a las 5 de la tarde.
Cuando llega la noche, cae la noche, la cacería de brujas comienza, donde si nos capturan, nos desaparecen o nos hacen daño.
Los policías en las calles no ven ciudadanos, ven enemigos. La fuerza pública no ve dirigentes sociales, ve terroristas.
Sí, claro, el gobierno siempre nos ha dicho que somos una guerrilla. Pero no, somos del pueblo.
O sea, lo que nos estamos haciendo es matando entre pobres. Sino que el ESMAD es asalariado, tiene su mensual ahí y también se sabe que se hace eso por necesidad. Son jóvenes, son niños que le impactan y eso duele dentro de uno.
Y la función de una primera línea es proteger al manifestante, proteger las marchas pacíficas. El gobierno dice que nosotros somos unos vándalos. La escoria de este país, los vagos, los desocupados.
Era vendedora independiente, vendedora ambulante. Vendía bolsas para la basura o cositas así. Acá en el transporte público.
Todo el mundo piensa que es salir a tirar piedra, que es ir a tener un escudo. No, no solo eso, también es formarnos políticamente.
Que cambiaran piedras por escritura, por un lápiz, por una hoja, por escribir unas leyes, por sentarse en una mesa a dialogar.
Y hay muchachos que van a una olla comunitaria porque comen mejor que en su casa. Ese pertenecer a un algo que te reconoce, que te da un lugar en la sociedad.
Es algo que es bonito, ¿sabes? Es esa ilusión que tienen los chicos de cambiar en lo que llevamos generación tras generación. Sí, o sea, muchos chicos están siendo amenazados, han sido amenazados, les han llegado cartas a sus casas diciéndoles que donde no se retiren de la primera línea la van a pagar y que la sangre que va a correr va a ser muy fuerte.
Nos tenemos que alejar de nuestras familias. Básicamente tenemos que vivir con miedo.
La presión psicológica y el ataque psicológico que nos han estado haciendo a la gente de primera línea nos está agotando.
Sabemos que nos van a matar, pero no hay guerra en la que no hayan muertos.
Aunque sin embargo pues también existe como esa esperanza de que todo va a salir bien, de que vamos a poder llegar a cambiar esta sociedad.
Lo que ha creado una especie de dos bandos. Por un lado tenemos como los vándalos, es decir, la primera línea de todas las personas que protestan, y por otro lo que se ha denominado en Colombia la gente de bien. La gente de bien son los ricos, los que se oponen a las protestas, los que salen a apoyar a la policía, pero son los mismos que han salido, fusil en mano, pistola en mano, a disparar contra los manifestantes.
Se cayó la reforma a la salud, se cayó la reforma tributaria.
La renuncia de 2 ministros, la salida de un general.
El gobierno está perdiendo la credibilidad frente a organizaciones mundiales.
Siento admiración que hayamos conseguido que la sociedad se pellizque un poco, ¿no? Que se haya reflejado que hay un modelo gubernamental neoliberal que no respeta la vida.
Y la única manera de combatir un gobierno es entrando nosotros también al mismo juego y es entrando a la política, pero con ideas que de verdad cambien esta sociedad.
El 2022 va a ser un proceso electoral donde yo tengo mucha prevención de que los candidatos alternativos o les hagan fraude o los invaliden o sean asesinados. Y esto no es paranoia, en Colombia se han dado muchos casos.
La forma que vamos a tratar de cambiar este país, y se va a hacer lo posible, es en las urnas de votación, donde realmente tenemos que saber elegir a quién vamos a poner al mandato de este país.
Si a este llamado a la democracia no se dan salidas democráticas, el país va a empezar una nueva espiral de violencia.
Se supone que el Estado, que la policía son entidades para protegernos y son los que nos están quitando la vida a nuestros hijos.
El paro sigue, el paro no para.
El paro continúa. Este país tiene que cambiar.
All right. We'll start off with Nathan Thompson.
I mean, I feel like sometimes you just got to speak to the challenge of what it must take to even capture something like that. Being in the midst of Molotovs and smoke bombs and rocks being thrown everywhere, it's pretty crazy. I was struck by the fact that most people being interviewed were covering their faces. So I think that speaks to the level of danger and fear that they must succumb to from just being involved in that. I liked that all the interviews were direct to camera. I think that might be one of the first times we've seen that, where people were they were looking directly at us and speaking right to us. It was pretty powerful. I don't think I really have many critiques. I don't think I have any critiques really. It was just intense.
Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I mean, the visuals alone are just captivating. Just seeing the rioting, the level of a danger that these people are going through, and what it takes to actually capture those images yourself. I feel like the interview that stood out to me the most was with the mother who lost her son and believed to have been beaten to death and was lied to, and just the tears running down her face when she's staring at you is such like a powerful image. I mean, it could have been just a portrait just like that. So that for me was like the biggest kind of gut punch moment in the whole thing, aside from all the crazy visuals of what's going on in the streets. But to me, that is what spoke to the humanity part of it.
Yeah, I think this the filmmaker producer's style is very distinctive. Just on the last three pieces that we've seen made by the same person, and I love seeing the sort of consistency in sort of style, even though each story is very different. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of action in this, which was, a little different than the previous ones that we've seen, but the pacing was just really incredible to watch. Everything from the music that they chose to the sort of color scheme, I thought was really good. So just another really visually strong piece. The narrative was strong. It was like journalistically strong. So no critiques for me.
And Raquel.
Yeah, I just want to echo pretty much what everyone said. I noted that I really liked the pace and the edit. And again, there was just a really nice balance with bringing in the very like personal, like micro story within the bigger story, which I really liked. Like the funeral scene had stuck with me. And just from covering so many of these kinds of protests, it's so easy to get fixated on like the flashy and the fire and all that. And I really like that they take so much of the 11 minutes to actually make it quieter and more intimate. Yeah, I like the style of this producer, company, filmmaker relationship.
Absolutely. We'll do one more because it's on the shorter end, and then we'll take a break because then we start getting into the bigger ones, or the longer ones, I should say. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome to Kuşköy, a village in northern Turkey not far from the Black Sea that's meaning translates as the village of the birds. But that's not a bird you're hearing. It's the bird language. Spoken by Orhan Civelek, the official bird language trainer.
Buradaki amacımız genç nesillere ıslığımızı, kültürümüzü aktarmak. Teknolojiyle mücadele ediyoruz şu anda. Telefon çıktı, ıslık gitti. Cep telefonu iyi bir cihaz. Ancak çekmeyebilir. Düşüp kırılabilir. Ben eğitim olarak tabii ki ıslığa yönlendiriyorum. Lütfen ıslık çalsınlar.
What once was used every day to communicate from one village to another, or across mountaintops and valleys, while locals tended to their crops, is now listed by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage that's at risk of disappearing. Cell phones have mostly replaced the use of bird language. That's where Orhan comes in.
Demin söylediğim gibi arkada gördüğünüz kurs verdiğim yer. Ondan sonra 2013'ten beri de kültürel mirasımız kaybolmasın. 1990 yıllarında burada 160 öğrenciydik ve ben burada okudum. İlk öğretimimi burada bitirdim. Ancak ilerleyen zamanlarda işte 2016 gibi sürelerde okulun öğrenci sayısı düştüğünden okulumuz taşımalı sistemine geçmiştir. O yüzden bir aşağı olan köye taşımalı sistemde öğrencilerimiz gitmekte. Burası da halk eğitimi bünyesinde kurs vermekteyiz. Korona sebebiyle şu anda kursumuz durmuştur.
Orhan explains the many practical uses and how this landscape conceived this way of communicating.
Şu görmüş olduğunuz vadi, komple görmüş olduğunuz Kuşköy olarak geçiyor. Yukarısı Sis Dağı'na dayalı. Kuşköy olarak geçiyor. Görmüş olduğunuz gibi burası engebelik arazi. Engebelik olduğundan ıslık ortaya çıkmış. Bazen soruyorlar.
Because a shout can only carry so far, and clarity is limited after just a couple hundred meters, whistling is the most efficient and clear way for villagers working their tea gardens and crops to communicate across the valleys.
Islığın asıl amacı haberleşmektir. Yani haberleşmek, yani uzun uzun konuşmak değil, haberleşmek. Mesela arazide vatandaş ne ister? Su, saat sorar, balta ister, ne bileyim yemek ister. Yangında yangın olduğunu söyler. İşte yarın imece işi olur, imeciye çağırırlar. Yani haberleşmek. Islık bir haberleşme kaynağıdır. Islığın kilometresi 3000 metre diye hesaplanmış. Ancak hava koşulları önemli. Hava koşulları uygunsa 5 de olur, 10 olur. Yani vadiye göre değişebilir.
Knowledge of the language proved to be more useful than just communication. During the Turco-Russian Wars, it meant survival for villagers.
İşte o üzerinden gelen Ruslar döneminde halk görünce birbirini ıslıkla haberleşmiş. Ruslar geliyor kaçın demişler. Halkla gizlenmiş. Rus geliyor bakıyor evlerde kimse yok. Aslında ıslıkla haberleşmişler, gizlenmişler. Bu şekilde halkımıza zarar verememişler. Eğitmen olarak şunu söylüyorum. Bu askeriyede kullanılabilir. Müthiş de işe yarar. Adam bir cimrilen sistemi keser. Ulaşımı kesebilir ama ıslığı kesemez.
Back in the town center, those who aren't working in their tea gardens take part in one of Turkey's cultural staples, cafe culture. Here, mostly older men sit around, smoke, drink tea, and chat. But there's one thing you don't speak about here.
Bu ıslıkla her nevi haberleşmeyi yaparız. Yalnız bir şey yapılmaz. Bu da ne diye sorarsanız biz sevdalık deriz. Aşk derler şimdiki yeni çağın insanları, aşk derler. Bu yapılmaz. Niye yapılmaz? Ben size herhangi bir şeye hitap ettiğim zaman ıslıkla öteki taraf duyuyor o sesi. Algılıyor, dinliyor mesela ne dediğimi. Onun için sevdalık yapılmaz kuş diliyle.
Engin is the owner of this cafe. Born and raised in Kuşköy and learned the bird language at a young age. But because of his prosthetic teeth, he's not able to whistle the bird language anymore. Though his son, who works in the fields, carries on the tradition.
Konuşmaya başladığımda 7-8 yaşlarında anca vardırım. Merak. Mesela büyüklerimiz birbirleriyle konuşurken tabii ki biz de ona merak ediyoruz. Ne diyorlar, ne yapıyorlar? Onların dediğini yapmaya çalışarak bu şeye ulaştık yani. Köyümüz dağınık ve yamaç yerleşim bilimlerinde yerleşildiği için haberleşme aracı olarak yani bir nevi telefon olarak kullanıyorduk. Eskilerimiz o amaçla kullanıyordu. Şu anda cep telefonu ve ev telefonları, yani teknoloji bu işi köreltti, kapattı. Niye? Gerek duymuyor. Adamın cebinde cep telefonu var. Bir yere haberleşecek, çıkarıyor cep telefonunu, alo işte buraya gelir misin? Veya yarın falan yere gidelim mi? Gibi haberleşmeyi telefonla sağlıyor. Ha ne zaman ki telefonun şarjı biterse ya da telefonu evde unuttu, yabanda denk geldi, o zaman ıslığı kullanıyoruz hala. Yine haberleşme aracı olarak kullanıyoruz yani. Daha 17 yaşında mesela ben çocuk bülbül gibi okuyor. Vallahi yılını hatırlayamıyorum. Kurs açıldı. İlk kursa merak saldı, katıldı. Evet, Orhan kurs açtı. Kaymakamlığın aracılığıyla beraber o kursa katıldı. Gitmek istedi, merak saldı. Ben de gönderdim kursa, öğrendi yani. Ben de öğrendiğinden dolayı memnunum. Ki bu töremiz, bu kültürümüz ölmesin. Öldüğünü istemiyorum yani. Yaşasın her zaman diye.
While younger generations are learning the language for the first time through classes, for some it's simply a way of life that's been passed down from generations. In the village of Karabuk, Genja Karaman is the youngest of 7 children. He learned it from his mother Emina, and the family still uses the bird language while tending to their crops high above their home along the mountain ridges.
Dilimiz biz doğduğumuzdan beri yani biliyoruz. Yani tam olarak kaç yaşında olduğunu öğrendiğimizi bilemeyiz ama yani kendimizi bildiğimiz bileli ıslık dilini konuşuyoruz.
Siz daha iyisiniz diyor. Anneniz daha iyi.
Annem daha iyi tabii. Tabii eskilerden tabii daha eskiler daha iyi. Daha sesli ışıklı ederler. Daha da şey yapar, güçlüdürler.
Biz küçüklükten beri böyle ışıklık biliyoruz. Şimdi birine çağıracaksın, telefon olmayınca ışıklıyla ulaşıyorduk. Öncelerden beri. Şimdi telefon çıkınca telefonla ulaşıyorduk. Yemek hazır gel dersin, işte sabah çalışalı dersin. Buraya gel. Biraz dişlerim çıkık ya.
Evet.
Bak. Gence buraya gel dedim.
Gence buraya geldi. Ben o kadar güçlü yapamam ama yani şey yaparım.
Ben normal. Çok yapıyordum da işte abi dişlerimi bu sene yaptıracağım. Bunun şeyi var. Ura Emine dedim.
Bak, Ura Emine dedim. Annemin adını söyledim.
Most days, Genja and his family set out in the morning to go to their fields high up in the mountains where they grow a variety of crops. The road is difficult to drive, and him and his uncle Mehmet must weigh down the truck with rocks if they're to make it.
It has weight.
Though, recently, flash floods destroyed much of the roads and bridges leading to their land, and had most villages in the area underwater. While the others begin a trek up to their mountain house and fields, Genja must go and get an excavator to start moving debris and begin to repair the road.
Evlere doldu, iş yerlerimiz var, hep makinelere doldu bizim burada. O hen aşağıda kapıda çektik ya. Al geçeyim ben abla. Ben terledim. Bu işte çok sel olunca iş yerimize doldu. Geldim makineyi boşalttılar hep içlerini. İşte bunlar da öyle kırım kütürüm işte hep yol mol yıkıldı. Çok yani. Ne edelim? Allah'ın şeyi, Allah'ın afatı. Haydi bakalım, tamam mı?
After almost an hour of hiking, Emina arrives at her mountain home, surrounded by lush gardens.
Hepsi oluyor. Ne dikersen oluyor, her şey var. Çay, fındık, bal, fasulye, misir, kabak, lahana deriz biz bunlara. Lahanalar. İncir fidem burada da var gene. İncir de var. İşte böyle oluyor, her şey oluyor. Biz buralarda bittik, büyüdük. Ben bura kızıyım zaten. Doğdum büyümem buraya. Biz buraları seviyoruz. Buralarda çay içerik, akşama kadar dururuk. Akşamca arabamızı, her şeyimizi koyaruk, giderik. Gideyiz burada evimize. İşimiz olursa yarın gene geliriz. Olmasa gelmeyiz. Aşağıda bahçelerimizle ilgilenirik. Ha bu kumlanda ha bu evi...
Emina checks on the honeybees and crops around the house before heading with Mehmet up to the tea gardens on another ridge. But first, we get to see the bird language in use. And it's undeniably impressive.
Haydi haydi de. Haydi de sen varsın. Ula haydi de. Uda işte orada olsa gelmemişler daha. Orada olsa. Aha Mehmet diyor bak şimdi.
Belki de İllaz olabilir.
He o İllaz. Ancak giden adam.
Ha işte ya.
Ulan nereye? Çay bakmaya değil, çay. Çayı bakmaya gideyim diye.
Ya işte eskiden buradan o tepe bayağı bir şenlikti yani. Burada da oraya çağırırdık ışıklıkla böyle kuş dili. Oradan artık ne söyleyeceksen söylerdin yani.
Anlayayım, ne dediğini anlayayım.
However incredible the bird language might be, it doesn't take long for Ilyas to pick up the phone and call Mehmet instead of whistling back and forth.
Doğru bir daha çağırayım ben sana.
A perfect example of how the language could one day be gone. Though COVID-19 has put a halt to Orhan's classes, he's not giving up on continuing to train students so they too can one day pick up the reins and teach others to keep this language and culture alive.
Play Store'dan indiriyoruz ıslık dili sözlüğü diyerek buradan tıklıyoruz. Abim, ablam.
He's helped to make an app that his students who've already learned how to whistle can practice with.
Ahmet'i aramayı unutma. Akşam misafirlerimiz var.
The very thing that threatens the language could, for the time being, be the thing to save it.
Ahmet.
When asked whether they can keep this language alive, Orhan is hopeful.
İnanıyorum. Çok iyi öğrettiğim öğrenciler var, okuyorlar. İnşallah bunun ileride önü açılırsa onlar zaten hocalar çıkacaklar.
All right, we'll start with, Priya. We'll start with Priya.
That was good. So like my initial thoughts, well, first, this was different because there was narration, which I thought worked for this. Otherwise, I don't think you would really have a sense of what was going on, sort of based on the interviews that they got. In sort of comparing this to the 4 previous pieces that we saw, which seemed very urgent news-wise or culturally sort of urgent or relevant, this piece kind of felt like an outsider when sort of thinking about what we've seen so far. And I know, the sort of newsworthy or culturally relevant piece is important when we're talking about these things. I don't really have much to say beyond that. I don't think like visually there was anything, super gripping or engaging, or I didn't have any like sort of overwhelming feelings about the visuals here. But it was a perfectly fine piece. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Let's go, Reckon.
I pretty much have the same experience as Priya, to be honest with you. I definitely see it for what it is. It's not one of those like very like explosive kind of stories. I think it is a beautiful story, but nothing really made me feel engaged or kind of attached to it or connected to it very much more than it just being an interesting story. Yeah, I don't have very much commentary as far as anything else goes.
Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, I think like Priya mentioned, it's important to note that, this is a different type of story, which I try not to legitimize or delegitimize a story based on if it's like hard hitting or not. It could be a little fluffy and still be like a really interesting angle. This one I thought had some problems. I felt like it was too long. I felt like some of the sound bites just really droned on, like the fella standing in the doorway. I was like, man, we've already heard that cell phones aren't important, or that cell phones aren't perfect, that their batteries die. Like, we get it. So I felt like they just lived on that for quite a long time. I like handheld stuff, but I thought some of like the B-roll or the cutaways just had this like micro shake that was just a little too much shake. That's getting a little picky about like the actual operating, but just a little too shaky. I also thought, I don't want to be too brutal, but I'm like a camera guy. So, I felt like there was a lot of instances where they were like shooting people from the camera person's eye level rather than like getting on the subject's eye level. So to me, that just feels like a little bit lazy when you could refine certain angles and tailor it to like each person rather than just kind of standing in one position and just looking everywhere. So definitely this piece is like significantly less refined compared to the other pieces we've seen. The drone shots were excellent. That was very nice. There was one kind of hilarious shot where it seemed like a dog tried to whistle, probably was just barking, but it made me laugh. And then when the guy just straight up like stopped whistling and was like, I'm just gonna call my buddy because this whistling like isn't working. I thought that was hilarious that he's like, these are the whistle guys, but no, they need to use their phone too, like everybody else. So it was still a fun piece and well done, for a travel shoot. So
Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, along the same lines, I feel like it was perfectly entertaining. Brought me to a different part of the world that I never knew existed, to a scenario in a language that I never knew I needed to know, apparently. I did catch that one part with the dog, though. I thought it was the dog responding to the whistling, getting called by it. So maybe the dogs understand it too. I don't know. But yeah, in terms of overall visuals, I didn't find anything too captivating or anything that just stood out. I thought it was, pretty respectable for what it was. There were parts that kind of dragged on. I think in the middle, that whole section with the cafe guys, I felt like that could have just gone, to the cutting room floor essentially, and because I would have rather have seen the people who are actually using the language earlier. But yeah, I mean, nothing too critical or anything. I mean, it's nothing to DQ them over or say to count them out. But in terms of what we've been seeing, I just don't think it's up there to the pars to the level that's been set so far.
Yeah, I think that leads me to a question that I'll pose to everyone. Again, not to DQ them, but given what you've currently see, do you see this piece finishing in the top 3 or honorable mention so far? No. Okay. I will asterisk that on our Google Doc. This one is just under 30 minutes. And yeah, we'll go from here.
A police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin shoots a black man named Jacob Blake 7 times from behind, leaving him partially paralyzed. Two days later, in the midst of protests and unrest, a teenager carrying an assault rifle kills 2 people and wounds a 3rd. Now that shooter, 18-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who was 17 at the time, is standing trial on charges of murder. The case will likely focus on the few crucial minutes around the fatal shootings on August 25th of 2020. But our investigation of these events reveals that the story is about much more than a single person. We analyzed hours of footage from that day and traveled to Kenosha just weeks after the events to hear from witnesses, several of whom have now been subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial.
It felt volatile, it felt tense, it felt like a war zone.
We're not like bad people or like people just going out to like shit up.
I feel like had we not been there and not reacted the way that we did to the situation, I think we could have been looking at an even worse scenario.
We also spoke with the sheriff who led law enforcement's response that night, which has become the subject of lawsuits. While protests against systemic racism were what first drew out crowds in Kenosha, Rittenhouse, his victims, and many of those closest to the shootings were white. What we found was a complex set of motivations on the streets that night that reflected the growing polarization in the country and helped set the scene for violence.
Oh shit. We got shots fired, guys. We got shots fired.
On the Sunday before the Rittenhouse shooting, Kenosha police officers respond to a domestic complaint and try to arrest Jacob Blake. As Blake moves away from them and leans into his car, he's holding a knife. An officer shoots him. Blake's lawyer later said that Blake didn't pose a threat. Video of the shooting quickly spreads online.
To hear about it is one thing, but to watch it, I guess it got to the point where, how many more?
Y'all ain't here to protect us. There we go.
Corey Washington, who's a local live streamer and now subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial, arrives to document the situation.
Let's check the scene out over here.
I mean, there's tons of people already starting to gather there. In the air, you could kind of feel the tension. At a certain point, more sheriffs arrived on the scene, and their presence kind of aggravated the crowd. And from there, it just started going crazy.
For the next 48 hours, the protests intensified. And at night, local businesses are looted and set on fire. Eventually, a new group inserts themselves into the already chaotic scene. Dozens of men, mostly white, equipped with military-style weapons and gear. And soon, a Facebook post will incite more of them to come. It's Tuesday morning, 13 hours before the Rittenhouse shooting, when on a Facebook page called The Kenosha Guard, a post publishes.
So my post just basically said, are there any patriots among us willing to take up arms and defend our lives, our families, our neighborhoods, and our businesses?
The author of the post is Kevin Mathewson, a controversial former city councilman who's now been subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting to gather here. There's about 10 of us.
Hours after his post, thousands have seen it, and Mathewson arrives at Civic Center Park, the epicenter of the recent protests.
When you burn down a building, you're risking lives, right?
I wanted people to come play defense. I wanted people to come to protect themselves.
But did any business owners ask you for help, for protection?
I was not asked directly by a business to defend anybody.
Jacob Blake! Jacob Blake!
At this point, demonstrators are marching peacefully in downtown Kenosha. They're demanding an end to police violence against black people. The presence of openly armed white men inflames the situation.
If you're not for Black Lives Matter and you're not for the movement, get the fuck out of here! Then quit burning the fucking town now!
Why is he here, and why is it okay that he's here with an assault rifle to protect infrastructure? But if I was here against the police to protect life, would I be able to?
The Second Amendment is meant for everybody. It's not exclusive to white people.
Out of everyone that I saw with the militia, they were all white males. So I honestly feel that they came to incite more racial problems.
Portia Bennett, who's a local activist, has been protesting for the last 2 days.
You get to see the people now that you have been living around forever. There are no more masks being worn.
Are there some truly peaceful protesters that may have been a little intimidated about seeing an armed person with a gun? Probably, but the Second Amendment is very clear, and my rights don't end where somebody else's feelings begin.
Throughout the day and early into the evening, more openly armed men arrived near the protests. Some positioned themselves close to businesses that had been damaged on earlier nights. This is where we first see Ryan Balch, an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran from a town 40 minutes away, who's there with a group of friends. He's also been subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial.
I would say what brought me to Kenosha was that I felt like something needed to be done. If law enforcement's not going to try to keep the peace, then somebody else needs to go out there and make sure that that happens.
Balch argues that his military training gave him the skills to help bring events under control.
We kind of trusted ourselves to insert ourselves in that situation and bring the situation to the correct conclusion.
At the time, he also supported the extremist Boogaloo movement, which is anti-police and calls for the government's overthrow. He says he later stopped supporting the movement. Balch and his friends eventually link up with other openly armed men. Among them is Kyle Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse is 17 years old. He's come to Kenosha from his home in Illinois. Balch says he didn't know Rittenhouse or the people he was with, but decided to team up with them anyway.
They weren't on the level of me and my guys. I don't think they trained formally together at all, but the more guys you got, the better off you are.
As for Rittenhouse, we don't know whether he sees himself as some kind of neutral force between the protesters and the police, like Ryan does. His social media posts at the time seemed to indicate he was a strong supporter of law enforcement. Since the shooting, he's also been seen flashing white power signs. And he's become an icon for far-right groups. Soon, Balch and Rittenhouse will come face-to-face with racial justice protesters.
It's past the curfew. Still have a fairly large crowd out here.
The organized daytime protests at the park are now over, and law enforcement has announced a curfew.
Our goal that entire evening was to disperse people from the Civic Center after curfew and to get them to leave, to get them to go home.
Kevin Mathewson, who'd called for the presence of armed civilians that morning, says he left because he was worried about the safety of his family, 10 miles away.
My wife was on the phone with me saying, hey, get your ass home. The kids are scared. I'm scared.
Breaking curfew was worth helping to create some type of positive change. It's one thing to sit at home and say that, yes, Black Lives Matter, but it's so much more impactful to put another body on the street.
Nathan Pete has been demonstrating in Kenosha for days, but tonight's protest is different, and he's carrying a gun.
I don't normally like to carry at protests because I don't want it to be seen as a sign of aggression, but I did carry on Tuesday specifically because of the threats that I saw floating around in a Kenosha Guard group.
Just arriving at the protest are Hannah Giddings and her boyfriend Anthony Huber. Both are unarmed, but by night's end, Huber will be shot and killed by Kyle Rittenhouse. Giddings has now been subpoenaed for Rittenhouse's trial.
I wouldn't really say we were like heavy activists or anything previously, but we knew Jake Blake and felt like we needed to be present and standing united with the people who believe the same things that we do and want basic human rights, civil rights, equality.
The standoff between protesters and the police becomes more violent.
If anybody get hurt out here, it's on y'all.
Everything started to move super quickly. Police and riot gear all yelling to disperse and go home, you're breaking curfew.
I got grabbed by the police, and he threatened to lock me up if he caught me out there again at night. I just went home.
Faced with this massive show of force, only a small number of protesters choose to stay. Among the shrinking crowd is Gage Grosskreutz, a paramedic from Milwaukee, who's also under subpoena for the Rittenhouse trial.
When you go into a protest or a march in a medic capacity, you're essentially waiving that luxury to be able to pick a side because, ethically speaking, you're there to treat everybody.
Like Nathan Pete, Grosskreutz decided to come armed with a handgun.
Because it's my right. Simple as that.
He'll later be shot by Kyle Rittenhouse after drawing his gun and trying to stop him.
The park is closed.
It was going the direction we wanted it to go.
To the unlawful assembly.
Law enforcement has one clear plan on this night.
We're not going to let the city of Kenosha burn because you want to, in the late evening hours, start destroying stuff.
Over the course of the next 2 hours, officers forced some of the protesters southeast, across the park, and onto this street, Sheridan Road, in the direction of the openly armed civilians. Balch, Rittenhouse, and other armed men are still stationed a few blocks down the road, near businesses that were damaged on previous nights.
I think that the police set the stage for it. They knew that there were armed groups down there. And they could have not pushed the protesters down Sheridan.
The sheriff told us that the police didn't plan for the armed presence down the road.
What did you tell your deputies to do if they encountered armed militia people?
By the time I think I knew that they were out there doing this, our staff was already deployed out there protecting the area. There was no direction to deal with the Kenosha Garden anyway at that point. We were midstream on this one, and we were going forward with the plans we had already had.
And we got the militia here.
Once protesters and openly armed civilians encounter each other, there's a confrontation.
Protect your property, not the streets!
As Balch and his group argue with protesters, Pete is live streaming.
Between Ryan and his group and the other protesters, I definitely felt quite a bit of tension. There were a couple very, very hot-headed members of his group actively agitating protesters.
You guys want to fuck around and find out?
Hey.
Balch tells protesters to keep moving.
The cops are straight up with us that they were going to push y'all to us, have y'all get pissed off at us, and then wrap you guys the fuck up.
Right.
So that's why I'm trying to push everybody on and move fast.
One of the militia members claimed that a police officer told him that the officers were going to push the protesters out of Civic Center Park and that the militia would handle them.
I don't believe that for a second.
The police continue pushing protesters further down the road to this intersection, near a gas station.
Whoa. Yeah, watch out. They got their guns up.
Hey, they're just trying to protect their property. Hey, no one touch anyone.
They're racist and they're out here to look cool.
Here is where we first see Joseph Rosenbaum, the first person Kyle Rittenhouse fatally shoots that night. He joins the fight against the armed civilians.
Shoot me, nigga! Shoot me, nigga!
As other protesters try to stop him.
Hey, stop! Hey! They're gonna get us all shot!
Rosenbaum has just been released from the hospital after undergoing mental health treatment. His reasons for being here are unclear, and he doesn't appear to have attended a protest before. But his actions on this night will add to an already volatile situation. At this point, the group of protesters has thinned out even more.
All of this is done pretty much in the name of Black Lives Matter, and there's definitely black people in the crowd, but there definitely was more white people.
The armed men chalk up any conflict with the protesters to miscommunication.
We had some negative interactions, but that was more of a confusion on their part about what we were about.
But many of the protesters feel uncomfortable with the armed presence. They accuse Balch and others of playing vigilante.
Why else are you going to show up, especially Kyle Rittenhouse, show up to a city you don't even live in, armed to the teeth to protect your community? This is not your community, pal. You don't live here.
You guys protecting that building? Yes! Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, you're welcome.
But the police praise the armed men and offer them assistance.
Need water?
We need water.
We'll give you a couple. We appreciate you guys, we really do.
This is not the group of people we want here, but you can open carry weapons. So there wasn't a violation of the law.
But just like the protesters, the armed civilians are violating the curfew, and police treat them much differently.
After that curfew, it didn't seem like police was trying to actively disperse or arrest any of the armed civilians. Why is that?
I'm not aware of any of the protesters that weren't being violent that were arrested either. Peaceful people were not getting arrested that night.
Hey, Dad, if you can keep people from pointing their guns at the crowd.
The armed men appear emboldened by the inaction of the police towards them. Minutes after encountering the officers, Rittenhouse explains to a reporter from the Daily Caller why he thinks he belongs in Kenosha.
Our job is to protect this business, and part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle.
It's about 15 minutes until he'll fire his first shot. At this point, several of the people we've been hearing from are now close to each other, and the situation is about to turn deadly. Nathan Pete is filming from here. Hannah Giddings and her boyfriend Anthony Huber are nearby. Corey Washington is here. His footage captures both Gage Grosskreutz and Ryan Balch walking by. Then, Kyle Rittenhouse runs past his camera.
I had been looking kind of at him the entire time because he looked young, he had a gun. So at the point where I see him run by me, I was like, that's weird. So I followed down in that direction.
Already it's running too, but let's check it out, right?
Rittenhouse walks towards a parking lot where cars are being vandalized. He passes Joseph Rosenbaum, who was fighting with the armed men at the gas station earlier. Rosenbaum now starts chasing Rittenhouse and throws a plastic bag that holds his belongings from the hospital. Close behind them, a man holds up a handgun and fires it. We don't know why. Then Rosenbaum lunges towards Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse fires 4 times.
Had I been in his shoes getting chased and then I heard a gunshot, I can't say that I would have done anything differently.
Rosenbaum, who's been hit, falls to the ground. There are 3 more shots from someone else in the parking lot.
Oh shit. We got shots fired, guys. We got shots fired.
Pop, pop, pop, pop, pop, pop, pop, pop. And I was like, oh, so they are really shooting.
I gotta find some cover.
Oh man, maybe they really are really just trying to kill people. And if they were going to take advantage of a situation, I'm a black person and I don't want to be a target.
Rittenhouse calls a friend, while others are helping Rosenbaum, who's on the ground. Then he flees the scene.
Why you shoot him? Hey! No, why you shoot him?
He didn't disarm himself after the first shooting. He continued to run around. As a gun owner, I view his actions as completely irresponsible.
You come running through looking wild with a gun on you, people are gonna think that you're doing something wild with a gun on you. So they reacted the way they should have reacted.
And as soon as they were all saying he shot somebody, Anthony was gone. And I tried to grab onto him and like, nobody was gonna stop him, you know? And then I hear a bunch more gunshots down the road and I was like, I just had a feeling. It was him.
Rittenhouse trips and falls. Anthony Huber hits Rittenhouse with a skateboard and attempts to disarm him. Rittenhouse shoots him in the chest. Here is Gage Grosskreutz with his gun drawn. He also gets shot and calls out for help.
I need a fucking medic! I've been trying to get on the back.
The reality of it is this is going to be a part of my life from here on out.
Keep him right there, we're coming out for you.
Rittenhouse runs toward police vehicles and raises his hands.
Hey, he just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot all of them down there!
The police make no attempt to stop him, and he isn't arrested until the next day.
Get up!
I didn't talk to them, but I'm sure they didn't know what this person was doing.
I'm just looking for my partner. Like, I'm just trying to find where he went. I knew he had been shot, you know? And then later on, I saw that video. They had pulled Anthony into that truck like minutes before I got there.
Both Joseph Rosenbaum and Anthony Huber die from their injuries.
Dude, Anthony Huber, man, he went down like a hero. You know, he thought there was a threat there and he was reacting to it. He just wasn't quick enough to react to that threat. And so, I mean, he got a really good death out of that.
He was 26. He had like... It's just like brutally cruel and unfair how that can just be snatched away like that by anybody who feels like it. Yeah. It's awful. It's awful. And there's no words to say to like make that feel any better.
I believe truly in my heart that if it wasn't for my actions and these brave men and women who answered my call to arms, I think that we would have seen a way worse outcome than what we saw.
But 2 people died.
Yeah, 2 people died, and that's terrible. But when you have people burning down buildings, there's always that chance life is going to be lost.
Who were the good guys and who were the bad guys that night? I don't think there were any. I think the militia guys and the protesters were just individuals who were stuck in a situation and were doing the best they could with it.
Kyle came here and he played cowboy. He played vigilante. He came here looking for a confrontation and he found one.
Who's responsible? I can't tell you. You know, I guess everyone who was there that night holds some level of responsibility. And who carries the most, I can't tell you.
Why didn't you guys arrest him right then and there? Because if it would have been one of us, things would have happened a lot faster and a lot differently.
Some people feel like Kyle Rittenhouse is a hero, and some people feel like he is a murderer. I feel personally that the situation, regardless of what was happening, should have resulted in something completely different and not people dying.
Nathan O'Neill, take it away.
No critiques on my end. I mean, it is a powerful piece of journalism from beginning to end. I really appreciate, I mean, the almost forensics kind of breakdown of the timeline of what happened, mirroring the images of the social media versus what was going on on through animations on the maps, and to really bring you to that scene and how it unfolded. And then the interviews really add an extra layer of just depth to this piece. Graphically superior. I feel like there was an image where I believe they froze the face in the social media content and then mirrored the image with the person they interviewed. I thought that was a really creative way to kind of introduce them into the piece, and just really powerful overall.
Raquel?
Yeah, I have to agree. It's so wild to watch these videos now, having known what came of that, like the sentencing. Sorry, I'm a little still taking it all in again, but I do have to agree that the graphics, it gave you a nice break and just ability to really understand, because unless you're from there, you hear a bunch of street names and you don't know what's going on, or just tactically what it even looks like. So I really liked the graphics, and same words that I wrote down here, the forensic style kind of textbook breakdown of what happened that day. And great reporting, very thorough, got everyone's side. They weren't afraid to ask the hard questions, especially to the chief of police. And it was good. I don't really have critiques.
Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, a very pretty different style than the other documentaries that we've seen so far. Very procedural, a lot of file footage. I really liked that they had a consistent interview setting that they brought everyone to. Just seeing the different people in the same setting just added a consistency to it, which was nice. That profile shot was nice. And then within that setting, I thought the perspectives that you came in touch with were just incredible. They asked hard questions. They asked the police, the chief of police, why did you kick everybody else out? Then you come up on these armed white guys and it's okay for them to stay. I'm glad that they asked the hard questions. Thought of really just one quote that stuck with me. It was a very strange quote. He said, "He got a really good death out of that." Oh, that's an interesting way to put it. But yeah, no real critiques. Pretty masterful overall.
Priya.
Yeah, no critiques either from me. Journalistically, it was near flawless. The reporting was super, super strong. And I know there's been this push from a lot of bigger newsrooms to invest in these visual forensics teams, and you can see why. I mean, it's kind of it's almost like the future of investigative journalism, these reconstructions and using video evidence to put the timelines together. And you can see just how valuable that is. Yeah, it was really incredible to watch. It was a pretty flawless piece of reporting from my perspective. Yeah.
Because you brought it up, Nathan Thompson, he got a good death out of it quote got the same feeling out of it. It then made me notice that all of the interviews were direct, again, staring at you, direct to camera. And I loved the forethought of, he said, got a good death out of it, facing this way. Next shot is the woman facing this way. And it was they were just, it wasn't a split screen, but mentally, it was really awesome. So, not supposed to say that, but it was. Next one, titled Sound of Judgment.
History wasn't written for us.
Alamance County is one of the last, if not the strongest, conservative county left in North Carolina.
Where are all the things about black people in Alamance County that we not exist? I know we were here.
Our streets! Our streets! His name, George Floyd!
We always told, don't say this, don't do that. It's just another form of fear, and I don't have none.
This is like the same as the past, but in a new light.
Black Lives Matter!
During the turbulent aftermath of the Civil War, a man named Wyatt Outlaw became a glimmer of hope for the future of Graham, North Carolina. He became the first black elected official in Alamance County, but the remnants of the Confederacy had other plans. On February 26, 1870, a local chapter of the Ku Klux Klan called the White Brotherhood came for Wyatt Outlaw in the night. He was lynched near the courthouse, a warning to those who dare question their power. Many members of the group were Confederate veterans, and among them, a local lawyer, the sheriff, and all of his deputies. No one was ever convicted of the murder, and some of the men went on to hold positions of power in government and in the criminal justice system. Years later, they erected a Confederate monument in front of the courthouse, complete with a rebel figure that still watches over the town square today. But many believe that the legacy of Wyatt Outlaw and the oppression that followed his death can no longer be ignored.
We shouldn't have to go look at something that symbolizes racism.
I had to get refreshed.
I knew I grew up in a racist place, so I always looked out for my people.
I was back and forth from here to New York. I came home on my birthday so my mother could see me.
We in Grand North Carolina, a small hick town, you hear me?
I stumbled upon this large crowd of black people. I never ever thought I'd see this.
Alamance County, we've been praying for this. My grandmother, your grandmother, your grandma.
We had the Confederates to the right of us. They're just distractions. I done had distractions my whole life and I didn't even realize it. I act like they weren't there.
I'm going to stand up for my Southern heritage. I love Graham. I love Alamance County. I mean, you're going to stand for your monument.
The energy was just amazing. I loved it. And it actually just enticed me to stay. I'm here now. It was my Million Man March.
If they got the monument down, they would be happy, yes, but they hate Sheriff Johnson.
The sheriff is a very powerful man, but he refuses to denounce white supremacy.
The black guy that just got arrested was manhandled.
How did you arrest him?
Because he refused to leave and
He didn't refuse.
Hey, whoa.
I was right
and was using language that is not decent language. You were standing there and should have heard it.
So you can arrest people for language?
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff Johnson, Gary Williams, Barry Brown, Steve Marley, Larry Ray, Thomas May, we run this town. Go away.
I'm here to build, to grow, and to love. Decided to start my own organization.
You gonna walk with PSC?
My goal now is to uninstall fear in my communities so we all can be able to use our voice. I had to grow and learn and settle down myself. People don't see me get rowdy.
Hey, did I say that? Your mama raised you better than that. I'm about to go beat one of these white folks.
Don't say that.
Come on with it. Come on with it.
My kids are what made me say, okay, I do have to do this. I have 2 kids that are out of my home now. I can no longer physically protect them. The only way I feel I can protect them is by going out there and trying to get change. I don't think that people realize how much danger we're in.
My good folks today.
Got your video going, ain't you?
Yeah. That's a nigga video right there. You got us a nigga now, boy.
There's some really hateful people in this world.
Don't get in my face. Don't get in my face.
I just remember one of them getting arrested and being taken into a restaurant. We getting drugged up the court steps and thrown in the courthouse. You got some kind of protection that we don't. They know it too.
Stand on this side of the street. If they can stand over here, we can stand over here.
Get arrested one time, they get you on the radar, get arrested another time. It's like, okay, maybe if he get arrested 5 more times, or he might get arrested one time, he might change his mind from coming out here.
We keep us safe.
It's like the Confederates against, and the police against the movement.
Three and a half years ago, my dad died. After he died, it pretty much killed me inside. So I started doing research. Family Bible. It's got all the bookmarks from family when they passed away. I started looking at more the bookmarks my dad had. So it's kind of where I found my background to the Confederacy. Just like my flag up there, Southern American. Our beautiful monument. I'm not no saint. I mean, I've been up there a lot. There's some stuff could be questionable.
What's up, you skanky bitch?
Black power.
White power.
Shut the fuck up.
4 more years, bitch! 4 more years, you red-headed bitch! Maybe you can hit my train next.
Whether you like it or not, we're here. We're not going anywhere.
We demand to be treated equal. Do it again, boy.
If you want to fear us, that's on you.
The people! We demand to be treated equal.
You're not going to Washington and destroying the White House. Change starts here.
My grandma knows the importance of that. I'm sure this young lady right here knows the importance of us getting to the polls and voting. You know what I'm saying? Y'all, please get to the polls. Get to the polls.
We've been out here canvassing, putting long hours in, all of these organizations.
This is the first time that we have got in these streets, knocking on people's doors. We've never, ever tried to vote these people out of office.
You are here today for change in Alamance County. This is what we mean when we say power to the people. It's power to every single one of you who are out here today.
Did anybody come or receive any intel that we're going to topple the monument?
No.
When we finish with our rally, we want to make sure that the community that haven't voted is going to vote.
Everybody had their mask on. I'm like, yes, I'm pumped. We're marching again.
Power to the people. Power to the people.
I was waiting for that day to vote.
Power to
It was so symbolic to us.
people. What's his name? What's his name? Black Lives.
I want you all to understand from 1870 until right now, there has been no justice in Wyatt Outlaw's case. We're grateful for the police, but we would be even more grateful for change. We ready. We ready. We ready for change. We ready. We ready. Say his name. We are getting ready to have our rally. We're gonna build our stage first. If you all will hang tight, y'all, if you have to, just party. The streets belong to us.
If you don't clear the roadway, you will be arrested.
Y'all pepper spray children. Y'all pepper spray elders. Crew, club, cops.
You just pushed me over there. Calm down. We're gonna make a party. Tensions is hot. Calm down.
No, hell no. You got me. Hell no. Hey, I'm from land. What you arrest me for?
You gotta open your eyes.
We were willing to power off. You've escalated this situation.
If you do not cease your unlawful behavior at the Alamance County Historic Courthouse and disperse peacefully,
Wall Street! Wall Street! Wall Street! Wall Street! Wall Street! Wall Street! Grab him like that! Hey! Get back! Move back!
They're still tear gas.
I wasn't able to register to vote. I wasn't able to vote. Guess they wanted to have more power than we did.
They've definitely lost our trust. There's no more trust there. There's no respect. The respect is gone.
This is the first year I ever voted in my life.
County Commissioner, red all the way!
I was in line for about an hour with Sheriff Johnson. He just said he wished it got back to normal.
Clean my boots off.
Good job very much. Good job very much. Let's go.
The path is clear for the new president-elect.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has been elected president.
The numbers are corrupt. It was a rigged election.
There is no evidence of widespread voter fraud.
We will never give up. We will never concede. It doesn't happen. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
Trump called us, asked everybody to show up. They let us march through. Got a little crazy from there.
Yeah, that's right. I took her office.
Is it patriotism to storm the Capitol, in your opinion?
Yes, because they're not listening to us.
The world watched as a reality TV star,
goaded a horde of goons to attack the symbol of our united belief in democracy.
Former President Trump, he empowered them. Ted Johnson empowered them.
Hey, hey, ho, ho! Racist cops have got to go! Hey, hey, ho, ho! Racist cops have got to go!
This year marks the 160-year anniversary that North Carolina seceded to join the Confederacy. This year, May 20th, 160 years. My goal is to go out there with my Confederate flag. Everybody's seen this flag before. Flag every town in North Carolina this year.
I still have so much past issues that I'm dealing with from all the trauma. In and out of county jail. Or
charged with resisting arrest, obstruction of justice. No matter how you put it, kind of threw my life upside down.
I like to speak to everybody. I don't know why.
the charges is the least of my worries. It's really my mental health.
We need to talk, man.
I'm just praying that other people that's inside the movement, they getting stronger and they healing. Because I'm about to be in the healing process.
Mission you on right now, bro, you can't deal with people that's not like-minded, bro.
This my auntie shot right here.
In this movement, we all fresh, we all new.
But y'all be good, I love y'all.
And I love excitement. But what have we done for these communities? Nothing. Before I was in activism, I was just in the neighborhood.
This place brings back a lot of memories.
People come to me like, I need a Black Lives Matter flag. This happened to my son. I know you got people. I go in these communities every day and they look at me something like I'm a superhero. But I can't help. And I don't know what to do. So it's like, yeah, I don't know what to do.
You see my hair? Well, I do all these hands out here.
So why in the heck I'm looking like this?
We have a lot of support now from all over the country, unfortunately, thanks to pepper spray. I think reality is that the hate is gonna grow a little bit longer.
Woo! This is institutionalized racism. We want an equal elements.
You know, right now I can't even see the statue. It's like blending in, I can't even see it now. I can imagine it's gone. I can imagine it's gone. No racist! Police! No justice! No peace! No racist! Police!
Foster, I love the hairdo.
Yeah, I don't know. Headphones just mess it up.
Always. It always happens. Ms. Priya, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I thought this one was really, really strong. I was actually gripped from like start to finish for this one, and I thought it was really smart how they started with sort of like the history and then went to sort of the the conversations around monuments and then touched on the insurrection. And I thought that narrative was really smart. The interviews that they got were incredible. I mean, the activists and then also the pro Confederacy guy. Yeah, I just thought the reporting was really strong. The visuals were really strong. It was really action oriented. It was very gripping, engaging. And there wasn't a dull moment in it. So overwhelmingly, I thought it was great.
Nice. Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I think it was pretty strong. I think comparing this to pretty much everything that we watched today, it is very much along the lines of like a minimalistic approach, very light on graphics, very light on any special effects. It let the videos and just the editing tell the story, and it didn't get in the way of a lot of the action that was documented. I really enjoyed kind of seeing this from two perspectives, kind of embedding themselves with two different characters and following them along, and kind of their backgrounds. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I didn't think it was as long as it was. So that's a plus.
Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, I was impressed. They do go heavy on the graphics at the very beginning. The graphics were like kind of that sketch style, but had like a 3D element to it, which was like very artistic and eye-catching for an open, just to deep dive into the history. And this was really subtle, but I loved when the aspect ratio changed ever so slightly from history to modern day, and the screen just slightly went full screen. I thought that was a nice subtle touch. I think it's amazing how well the producer balanced relationships between the two camps. I think, Priya, maybe you said that. That takes some real skill to build trust with both sides, and to be in the home of Thomas May. One shot that really stuck with me was when it was obvious this is a peaceful protest, and then the police start inciting things, and then there was this long lens shot down the sidewalk of Thomas May just standing there, and you just get the feeling that like he's behind this or someone's behind this, and then things just start to get progressively worse for the protesters. I love it when a documentary can make a small town story feel huge, and this succeeded at that. And then they also followed him and had the element of him at the Capitol insurrection, not necessarily in the buildings, but present at that event. I think that really showed even a lot more about his character and the lengths that he'll go to stand up for what he believes. And I thought that made it incredibly well-rounded.
Raquel.
Yeah, I almost hate going last because I agree with everything that everybody's saying so far. It was definitely very engaging. I love that it was from a town that I hadn't heard a lot about, and yet shared so many experiences and from other places that I've seen. And so it's like this, again, like the micro story within this like bigger story that's happening across the nation. I loved having characters on both sides, like you guys said. Like I feel like this character, he's like Smeagol. It's like every time I saw him, I knew something was going to happen on the screen. But it was very engaging. I loved the theatrical storytelling in the beginning of the history, just to give context, because sometimes those pieces can be a little bit hard to digest everything, but they made it fun to watch. And yeah, I really liked it from beginning to end. I was surprised that it was 20 minutes long, to be honest.
Nice. The next one you have already seen. It's Prone, the one we ranked first, I think, in editing, was it? Would you guys like to watch it again, or the first 5 minutes, or do you feel like you have a pretty good grasp on that one?
I personally remember it because that one really stuck with me, but if anybody needs to watch it, I'm down.
I don't need to watch it again because I have my notes for discussion, so I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Alrighty. Then we are moving on. The next one is an immigrant family moves through generational trauma. This one's a bit shorter. We got a couple that are shorter in a row, so that this will be a nice change of pace.
I was born in 1958, and when I was born, it was activists, you know, the Black activist era. It was Fannie Lou Hamer, and it was Rosa Parks.
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom now!
All types of things were going on in the Black community at the time, and the struggle eventually caught up to me. My name is Colette Mambo. I live in Southbury, Connecticut. I have a lovely husband and twin daughters. My mother was an immigrant. She came from northern England. Her father was a Somali from Africa, and my father was first-generation Jamaican. So we were an immigrant family mixed in with an African-American family. I grew up in Queens, New York, far Rockaway Boulevard. We moved from there when I was 7 years old. We left what now I see was our comfort zone, moving from an all-Black neighborhood into an all-white neighborhood. And we later came to find out that it was not going to be an easy road for our family. Home was a happy place, and there's no question about it. But as soon as that door opened, and you'd have to make that walk to the bus stop, just walking down the street, you know, the looks that you get, the shouts that you get, you know, they're calling your names, they're telling you to go back to Africa where you belong. I mean, a child, this is what a child is being exposed to. It's shocking, it's degrading, but most of all, it's fearful.
When young people, and young people of color specifically, experience trauma and racial trauma specifically, it really confuses their place of being, and it really disrupts the way in which they were coming to understand the world.
Hello, Dr. Laban. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Colette. It's very nice to meet you too. My name is Dr. Siobhan Moore Laban, and I am a licensed psychologist. My focus is on trauma as well as the impact of trauma on marginalized communities. Trauma in and of itself can already be life-altering. Racial trauma, even more so. You begin to see the world in a way that questions where you're safe and who you can trust. That sense of safety is tied to, am I safe here because of just who I am?
My mother always had the shades drawn. My mother always felt that she had to protect us from what could happen. She eventually went out and got German Shepherds. We had dogs in the house because she felt that was very important to protect my family. We started to find and explore places in that very neighborhood that were safe havens. We found a place that they called the Matita Conch. It was a beautiful wooded area. It was right around where the bus stop was, about a half a mile from the house. It was almost like a small paradise. And there was no one there, just kids from the neighborhood. One day, I was playing down in the Matita Conch. We had tents, and it was wonderful, and it was happy. And I was down there with my Jewish friend, Robin, And my twin sister said that she was there that day. I don't remember. And they said that my second oldest sister was there that day. I don't remember that, but I do remember Robin Charles, and I remember talking to her. And all of a sudden, she started to change in color, and she seemed to have been looking behind me as to try to warn me that something terrible was about to happen. But I didn't have time to look behind me. I was knocked unconscious. My sisters told me that they saw everything. They saw that it was a young boy. He was a teenager. I knew who he was. They said that he had crept up behind me and just attacked me. And he didn't think anything of it. It's something that he wanted to do. They remember his face. They remember the smirk on his face. He didn't say anything, but he just attacked me, and he wanted to hurt me. I remember when I came to, my mother was there in the Matita conch holding me in one arm, and in the other arm, she had this huge log that she was dragging. She was crying, she was screaming, she was shouting, "How can you do this to my child? I've had enough of the racism. This has got to stop. You've hurt my child, you've injured my child." And my mother dragged me to that house across the street, that same house that every day they called us the N-word. Every day they told us to go back to Africa. So my mother, in her anger, she took that same log that the boy hit me with and threw it through their glass window, broke the window, and started screaming and shouting, "Come out, come out. You want to hit my child?" My mother was literally at the end of her rope. She'd had enough. That was a defining moment for me, a defining moment for my mother. It was a defining moment being Black in that neighborhood. She had had enough.
I am not going to serve you because of my race. I'm not going to serve you because of my race. Move on.
We read stories about Jim Crow and segregation and lynching, but we don't read stories about what happens in between that while civil rights was being played out.
This was in the backdrop, and I often wonder the reason why the level of racial intensity had to have been the influence from what was going on from the 60s as I was growing up.
Yeah, and those experiences send messages about worth, right? They send messages about whether you are worthy to be served in the front of the restaurant or the back, whether you're worthy to be at the front of a bus or back, whether you're deserving. The type of hatred and violence and racism that existed at that time and still exists today is used to teach you that you are less than in some way. Right? Even when your family is actively working to teach you the opposite. It takes a lot of work and effort to remind yourself of messages that are strong and powerful and opposite to what society might be trying to teach you about yourself and people who look like you.
I often wonder over the years, being so traumatized as a child because of the racial incidents, why it hasn't manifested into extreme anger, extreme anxiety.
You know, everyone responds to trauma in different ways. Your home itself was a safe place. That can be a buffer and a support to helping you adjust and deal with the trauma in different ways, right? In ways that may promote more resilience and strength. I mean, and the other piece of it is that you also witnessed strength and resilience. So even though around you, outside of your home, trying to come into your home, there was anger and violence and racism and discrimination, even despite that, your family within and of itself was providing love and safety and comfort and reassurance and showing you strength and showing you resilience.
Because of my trauma and because of my experiences of racism as a child, I feel the need, the dying need to get active, to do something about it, to make a difference, in a peaceful way. So we started an advocacy activism group here in my town called Justice Southbury. We show up every Sunday. There's about 500 Facebook members of Justice Southbury. And what we do is, ever since the death of George Floyd, we hold these peaceful rallies. So I'm wondering if, because of my trauma and my past, that this is influencing me to move forward, to do something that's bigger than myself, to get active in my community. Is there a connection here?
Yeah, there can be a connection between activism and healing and thriving in the wake of trauma that one has experienced. Racial trauma has a lot to do with using race and discrimination in ways to oppress a group of people and keep them in a subordinate position and silenced in a lot of ways. But activism allows for you to take that power back and to take that control back and to be empowered and to empower your community to feel hope that change is possible. And that what has occurred and the racial trauma that exists doesn't always have to exist. And that even though you have been on the side of receiving it, you can now also be on the side of changing that.
When you are a Black kid moving into an all-white community, you can lose your identity. You can lose your sense of self. And I'm so happy that I was able to educate my children about who they are, their long history, their ancestors, and to see where they are today. I have to let them know that, we're still living in a country that judges us because of the color of our skin, and things happen because of the color of our skin, and those things are not always right. I want the sun to shine in on our lives as much as possible, unlike when I was growing up in fear of violence, of fear of somebody getting hurt, fear of being attacked. It's different for my children now. It's different. It's almost like 50 years later, and thank goodness I can say that I don't have to have my shades drawn in my home, but there's still, a way to go, a long way to go.
All right, Rocky, you went last time. You're going first this time.
I thought that was a beautiful story. It's definitely a change of pace from a lot of what we've been seeing. But it's nice, I think, talking about generational trauma and mental health is just so important, and like visually, I think it can be hard to do that. But they had really great interviews. I think the interviewees were just, man, it was a monologue. It was wonderful. There's so many quotes that I would have from her. I also really liked, I wrote the kind of like still live portraits that they would do when they would kind of show a new speaker. That was just nice, and it gave you a moment of pause to really meet someone before they just go right into talking. But yeah, that's all I got so far.
Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I think it was nice. I mean, it was put together as visually compelling as you can, with something that doesn't have the visual elements, obviously, to support it. So I think they were challenged in that respect. There were some weird kind of editing choices where it seemed a little jumpy from the interview setting to one of the subjects on a computer back and forth, and it was a little weird for me. But overall, I feel like it doesn't reach a level of top 3 for me, at least.
Ms. Bria.
Yeah, well, first let me agree with Raquel that I really like the subject, the woman Colette Mambo. I thought she was so compelling to listen to, and I mean, I could have listened to her talk for a while. Uh, is this a story best served in a visual format? Probably not. I think this was produced more of like a podcast format. I think I could see this being, produced in like an audio format, which makes sense. NPR's produced it. The story was compelling. There was just nothing visually. I don't think none of the visuals really elevated the story at all. So from my perspective, I don't think it would make the top 3 either.
And Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice deep story. Particularly compelling is the mother, responding to her daughter being attacked, and kind of taking things into her own hands. Just enough is enough. It's pretty intense. But yeah, like I think overall it felt kind of a little bit more like a talk show to me than like an in-depth documentary. So I definitely agree with Priya that kind of the format of it just lends itself maybe a little bit more to another format. Yeah, I think that's about all I've got to add.
All right. On to the next one, the true life of a nomadic Amazon camp force worker.
What time is it? Is that the right time? Yeah. Oh, you probably should get going.
5 nights a week, from December through February, around 6 p.m., it's time for America Martinez and Shay Machin to put on sturdy shoes.
Thank you, baby.
Throw on one of their Camper Force t-shirts from a previous holiday season.
Because you're all Phoenix.
Then head to an Amazon return center in Mississippi for a 10 to 12-hour night shift.
Bye, Grandma, Grandpa. Bye, guys.
It's their second shift of the season.
Oh my God, man, I'm tired already. Your first week, you'll come home and parts of your body hurt that you never even knew could hurt.
For the past 4 holiday seasons, the couple has worked for a niche Amazon program called Camper Force. It gained notoriety when it was featured in Nomadland as the main character Fern's seasonal gig. The 3-month assignments at Amazon fill the family's bank account, allowing Machin and Martinez to only work sporadically at minimum wage jobs the rest of the year while they travel the country in their full-time home, a luxurious RV they lovingly refer to as the Beast.
With our second child, I was able to be home with him for a whole year, and that's because of our tiny footprint. That's because we live in an RV. That's because of Amazon.
Since 2008, Amazon's been recruiting hundreds of RV dwellers for Camper Force each season. It's a small portion of the behemoth's 150,000 seasonal workers, but the program has exploded this year. The number of Camper Force sites has doubled since 2020. Now other retailers like JCPenney and electronic component distributor DigiKey are offering similar work camper programs too.
There's a lot more options that are popping up, and I kind of feel like it's all rooting from Amazon. Amazon started it, but where did it come from? Like, I can't see Jeff Bezos sitting there watching TV going, let's just help out some RVers, like.
I think Amazon is trying to address this general seasonal labor shortage any way they can.
They have the opportunity to do this kind of temp job to make their lifestyle make more sense, and Amazon needed temporary workers, so it seems like a perfect match.
But even as the program swells, campers say Amazon has cut back on benefits, like arranging campsites and paying for them directly.
The benefits have changed over these last few years, and I do think that they're probably going to change again next year, because this year they had a lot of problems.
We take you inside the life and work of an Amazon Camper Force family and talk to former Amazonians and labor experts about why the program makes sense and how it's changed. At their campground in northern Mississippi, Machin and Martinez have decked the Beast out with holiday decorations. There's a playroom filled with toys for their 2 kids, Oliver and Damien, a full-size bed above it, a propane fireplace, and plenty of room for their 2 dogs, Emma and Penny, to lounge.
Your turn, Alex. 7.
Evenings are spent playing board games around the kitchen table.
Yeah, do this one. Or that one.
Sorry.
It's not what people think. We just sit around
having campfires every day. But when the weather's nice, we do and enjoy having some s'mores outside. The kids love that.
I think it's done now.
It's done now? Let's see.
The family first hit the road in 2016 after losing their jobs at an ambulance company and then losing their home. They decided to live on the road full-time in 2017.
And we don't really see an end in that. Amazon was our first work camping job, and Amazon showed us that we could live like this, that we could afford to live like this, that it has been our fallback every single winter.
They were inspired by Machen's parents, who've been living the RV life since 2012.
Knock, knock!
You want pizza?
Here, babies. We thought they were insane, and within a couple of years, we saw their health completely turn around, their relationship completely turn around.
I don't want people to think that we do this because we can't afford something else, I want people to know we do this because we like to do it and our kids enjoy it. And if they ever say they don't want to do it, we would settle down for them.
Now, Machen's parents are parked next door in their own RV, watching the kids while the couple works at night and helping with homeschooling and meals.
You guys want a little more? We are blessed to watch our babies so much.
Amazon starts the hiring process in July each year, recruiting from booths at popular RV shows like Quartzsite in Arizona and in online communities of work campers. This year, Amazon offered part-time and grocery positions for the first time. Candidates must be at least 18, have a high school diploma or equivalent, be able to stand or walk 4 to 10 hours a day, and lift up to 49 pounds. They must reside in an RV at a campground for the duration of the assignment and aren't allowed to park overnight on Amazon property. Applicants get to choose their assignment location. This year, Machen and Martinez chose to work at a brand new Amazon return center just across the Mississippi border from Memphis, Tennessee.
Right now it feels daunting because we're just barely starting.
They get home from their shift at 6 a.m., sleep off the fatigue, and get ready to do it all again the next day.
You can do anything temporarily, and you just kind of got to get through it, and I'm looking forward to getting the first paycheck.
Amazon started the Camper Force program in 2008, around the time of the Great Recession, with just one location, Coffeyville, Kansas. Although it represents a small portion of Amazon's overall seasonal hires, it's continued to grow. Amazon added 2 new locations in 2009. A decade later, in 2019, Camper Force was at 9 sites in 3 states. Last year, it spanned 13 sites in 8 states. This year, the program has doubled for a total of 26 Camper Force sites across 14 states.
Because there are so many folks who during the pandemic chose to retire early, that this is a way of supplementing their income and fitting in with their lifestyle.
One of the new sites is the Return Center in Mississippi, where Machen and Martinez work.
You look at the item, figure out what it is. Is it the right item? Is it opened? Is it closed? Is it used? Is it damaged? The computer will go through a series of questions that you have to answer about the item. The computer will determine where this item needs to go.
Machen says they get about a minute to evaluate the condition of each returned item. The last 3 years, they worked at fulfillment centers, picking and packing.
It's bending, it's stooping, it's crouching, it's getting on your hands and knees, digging through bins and going through shelves and things falling on you. Being in a very loud machinery type environment for hours and hours and hours on end with no stimulation other than a beeping hand scanner, and that scanner haunts you. Like, you come home and go to sleep and you still hear it beeping in your brain.
I did lose a little bit of weight. I get a little healthier. I feel a little better after working every season. But it's a lot when you're doing it 5-6 days a week, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever it is. So it's just exhausting.
When people think about low-wage
Hey,
cleaning
students,
work,
we could stop this
they
one.
often think of Amazon. And so I think what Amazon is
Roger.
trying to do is to change its image.
Nathan, you look ready. We'll let you go first. Nathan Thompson.
I mean, it's just so hard to watch, a corporate storytelling after seeing incredibly in-depth pieces about hard-hitting stuff. I mean, okay, it's interesting. They're camping out there, and I guess they can survive camping because they can work in Amazon at the same time. I feel like we get the flavor of it. They're on the road. They're having s'mores. We get the feel for it. No, I feel like constructive criticism, like the narration was extremely prescriptive. I much more like appreciate narration that adds to the story rather than tells you exactly what you're seeing, like avoiding the kind of see it, say it. It's like, oh, they're putting on their t-shirts. Yeah, we see they're putting on the t-shirts. Tell us something that expands on the story more. There were a lot of website screenshots. If you're throwing in websites all over the place, I feel like you're just like make it shorter, just make it shorter. We don't need to see screenshots all the time. There was one interview I thought that was one of the main interviews was quite nicely lit, looked like soft light. There was nice depth of field, so that was great. Maybe keep an eye out for color temperature on a couple of the scenes, and one night shot was really high noise, so just on a technical aspect, kind of keep an eye on your ISO, keep that a little lower. That's my feedback.
Raquel.
Yeah, I guess if I had to do constructive criticism, I guess I wasn't grabbed right away. I didn't have any personal attachment to any of like the characters, and so I didn't really feel invested in the why I go deeper into the Amazon wormhole. And again, also it did feel a little bit like a commercial, like a little corporate-y, like maybe that was just the narration. Yeah, but I was going to say there was that shot of the interview inside the trailer that I did really enjoy. I like how it was kind of dark in the background and she was really well lit. But aside from that, I didn't feel connected to the story right away. So it didn't really engage me further.
Priya?
Yeah, this was another one where I question whether this was the best platform to tell this story. I don't really see this as appropriate for documentary. I think this could have been like one of those explainer videos that's like a 4-minute piece that you sort of watch. So to me, this wasn't the best way to tell this story. I mean, I did kind of appreciate some of the graphics. I thought those were kind of attention grabbing, but other than that, I really don't have a lot to say. I very much agree with what Nathan and Raquel have already said, but my main critique is that I don't think this is the right sort of platform for this story or topic.
And O'Neill.
Yeah, I think it's all been said so far. I just feel like watching it, they even make a point to mention No Man's Land, which we've already seen the great storytelling there. And I just feel like there was no new ground broken really in what they were bringing to the table in the first few minutes that we could tell. So.
All right, there it is. We could go to the next one.
And just to confirm, this one will not be in consideration.
No.
All right, Roger.
Mm-hmm. Next one, can PG&E stop causing so many fires in California?
Pacific Gas and Electric is California's largest utility company, and it has a massive wildfire problem.
The utility giant PG&E filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. The company facing billions of dollars in potential liabilities for its role in last year's deadly wildfires.
A new report out today on California's deadliest wildfire ever. The inferno north of Sacramento killed 85 people, destroyed 18,000 homes and buildings.
The Sonoma County DA has filed criminal charges against PG&E over its role in starting the 2019 Kincade fire.
5 of the 10 most destructive fires in California since 2015 have been linked to PG&E's equipment. With 25,000 miles of power lines in high fire threat areas, PG&E has spent the last couple years relying heavily on one simple way to reduce the risk of it causing a spark: shut the power off.
So it happened twice for almost a full week at a time, and we essentially lost that full week of service. We lost all of our food supply, we were not able to operate, we lost that revenue.
So now, PG&E is trying out a new solution for keeping the power on safely in remote areas. It's this small, standalone renewable microgrid in the mountains of Briceburg, California.
So this system is powering 5 customer meters, year-round, 24/7, 365.
PG&E is also building bigger backup microgrids as part of its $5 billion 2021 fire mitigation plan. It also includes 300 new weather stations to monitor for severe conditions, LiDAR, drones, and hundreds of cameras to provide 90% visual coverage of high fire threat areas, hardening the system by doing things like moving 23 miles of line near Paradise Underground and more aggressive clearing of trees around power lines.
We must succeed. Civilization, California, our communities need all of us to come together to figure out how to solve all these things at once, to get clean, reliable, safe, affordable energy. Like, we have to. We are not just going to pack up and leave California.
We went to Briceburg to see the 5 customer microgrid that PG&E says is proof it's committed to doing better, and visited communities asking the utility to work harder at keeping their power on and keeping them safe. Keeping the power on for 16 million Californians is a big job. So is maintaining the integrity of more than 100,000 miles of power lines while keeping it clear of vegetation that could turn a spark into a deadly wildfire. All this while answering to California regulators and, as an investor-owned utility, shareholders.
The management of the company mostly tried in the years leading up to Napa, Sonoma, and Paradise to please shareholders by controlling costs.
The deadliest fire in California history occurred in Paradise in 2018 when a live wire broke free from a 99-year-old PG&E electric tower. It was 25 years past what PG&E considers its useful life. 85 people died.
There's one person who committed suicide in his home. As the fire was bearing down on him, he decided to take his own life rather than wait for the fire to consume him. So PG&E did not plead guilty to the death of that person, but they did plead guilty to the death of 84 other people.
Clearly there were oversights, and clearly we wish it hadn't happened.
PG&E is trying everything it can think of because it knows that, it needs to repair its relationship with the state of California.
By January 2019, PG&E was in bankruptcy. It emerged last year after agreeing to pay more than $25 billion in damages to insurers and 70,000 victims of the fires it's caused since 2015.
The way that we operated our electric system in the 20th century is no longer safe. We've got crumbling infrastructure as a country all over the place. This is not unique to PG&E.
Indeed, investigators in Southern California found San Diego Gas and Electric at fault for a series of fires that killed 10 people in 2007. Texas power companies failed to keep the power on during this year's winter storms. Portland-based Pacific Power is under investigation for the deadly 2020 wildfires. But a frontline investigation found that going back more than a decade, PG&E resisted spending money on preventative measures, saying wind-driven fire risk in its territory of Northern California was significantly lower than in Southern California. But while utilities in Southern California launched weather stations, cameras, and satellites after the 2007 fires, climate change has drastically increased the risk in the north. Last year saw 5 of the 6 largest wildfires in California's history, all in PG&E's service territory. Since 2018, the simplest way PG&E reduces the risk of equipment sparks is by shutting it off in high-risk areas during dry, windy weather. It calls these public safety power shutoffs, or PSPS events.
There was a big fire in 2019 called the Kincaid Fire that was ignited by PG&E equipment. But because it was the only fire during a wind event that would have ignited many, many fires if the power hadn't been shut off, all of CAL FIRE's resources were dedicated to controlling it and containing it. And that meant that Healdsburg and Windsor didn't burn down.
PG&E had 9 power shutoffs in 2019, lasting from 14 hours to 7 days and impacting at least 1.3 million customers. That number dropped to 6 outages in 2020, impacting 650,000 customers. Despite earlier assurances they were temporary, PG&E says PSPS events are here to stay.
Public safety power shutoff is a tool that's probably going to be around for quite a while. California's not getting wetter, It's getting drier, it's getting hotter.
Just in those first couple outages, our losses exceeded $30,000.
Brennan Jensen is part of the quarter of California's population, 11.2 million people, who live in 4.5 million homes in the wildland-urban interface threatened most by growing wildfire risk. In 2019, she and her husband bought the 100-year-old Hotel Charlotte in the town of Groveland, a gateway.
All right, we're stopping this one on per judges. Nathan O'Neill, you get the honor, my sir.
There we go. Yeah, so I think this is kind of along the same lines as the previous one that we saw. It seems a little analytical in its approach, essentially. Some of the graphics are pretty interesting. I like the animations that kind of showed what work was being done to kind of propel that piece of it. And I think there was like some rundown graphics that kind of showed like, you know, where we're headed next. But overall for me, like it just didn't really grip me as far as, you know, why would the average person care? Like I lost that sense of humanity, and I feel as that needed to be at the forefront for the viewer to really commit to watching.
Priya.
Yeah, I agree with Nate. Again, with the previous piece and this one, I did appreciate the graphics. I thought they did a good job on that. I can appreciate the accountability journalism here with, you know, sort of examining, you know, the utility companies, you know, role in all of this. Again, the narration felt a little, you know, pedantic. I felt like it, you know, was sort of droning on a little bit. And when we've already seen so many standouts thus far. So yeah, this one, not a whole lot more to say. This one just didn't really grip me in any special way.
Raquel.
Once again, I'm echoing what my colleagues here are saying. I just wasn't gripped. I wasn't given the why, like Nathan was saying. Like maybe if in the beginning there was a bit more of the showing of the why and even what led to the, like, why did they want to make this? How did they discover this particular thing? I just wasn't getting that right off the bat. And I definitely found myself zoning out a few times. So it just wasn't gripping me. It wasn't keeping me there with it.
And Mr. Thompson.
Well, Priya made me look up the definition for the word pedantic, so that's great. I'm gonna save that from my lexicon. Yeah, I think if they, you know, at 6 minutes in, they started to get into like the personal local tie-in of someone who's affected. I'm like, why don't you lead with something like that or get to that a little more so that people care? Like, don't just talk to the top brass at the power company like right away. Like that's not a way to really draw people in, I don't feel like. So that would be my constructive criticism is dig a little deeper for the people whose houses have burned down, for the people who were affected. Animations, very nice. Highlights were blown out a lot. So I would say on a technical level, keep an eye on exposure or color it a little different. And everybody else covered it.
All right. Students, not a top finisher, obviously. But what is a top finisher is Priya's vocabulary usage so far. So we'll keep track of that. On to the next one. This one's going to be runtime almost 23 minutes. Do we need a 5-minute break beforehand, or you judges good to roll through? Everyone's good?
I'm good.
All right. Boots on the Ground. That is the name of the next one.
My wrist, man. My wrist, man, please. No, I can't take that, man. I can't. Let me, I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground, bro. I'm gonna lay on the ground. I'm gonna lay on the ground. Ah! Ah! I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down. I'm going down.
We need these charges brought to show these folks they cannot publicly execute black men in the streets.
Boots on the ground. We're here. We're here. Boots on the ground. We're here. We're here. Boots on the ground.
I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think it was one of the most important things to do. People ask me why I'm doing it, and I literally have no choice. I have no choice. I could not imagine not doing it because it needs to be done. Injustice closed these streets. What do we look like letting them open back up without justice?
The laws have to change for justice to be served. When we talk about getting justice, how do you get that? You get that through the laws changing.
Today would have been Justice Tigan's 36th birthday, but instead his life was stolen on August 19, 2009, and this Midway shopping center is the last place that he was seen alive.
I am the founder of an organization called Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence, and I work with families that have lost their loved ones at the hands of law enforcement.
You will never be able to bring this family's brother back. You will never fill that hole, but you can, in his name, stop this from continuing to happen over and over again.
I am a high school teacher, and I've been one for about 23 years, and I've lived in this neighborhood for about 23 years. I had this idea that it was really important to be a neighborhood teacher. I wanted to be able to see my students as I walk down the street, maybe even live next to them, go to the same grocery store as them. And so I bought a house less than 2 miles from my job. This is what broke my brain. George Floyd was killed about 260 steps from my door. Cup was the store that I would run to when I needed an avocado or in the middle of cooking, and I would be able to keep things on the stove as I ran to get an ingredient. This is my neighborhood. The person who filmed his murder was my student. So when the uprising occurred, when the protesters gathered at the intersection of 38 in Chicago, I heard the sounds of George Floyd all through the night. I handed out water, I handed out face masks, and I joined them. Yet when the National Guard rolled up my street with the MPD shooting rubber bullets and tear gas at my neighbors, at my students, at the people gathered in peaceful protest, something in me just broke. There were military helicopters above my house. And you gotta understand, I am a veteran. I was in the Marine Corps. I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't do anything but be black and be angry. And I have been out here since.
Since the year 2000, in the last 21 years, there has been over 470 murders at the hands of law enforcement. And there has only been one conviction in the history of Minnesota, and that is a minority man that killed a white woman. And prior to George Floyd, there's been so many more murders that have gone unaddressed, so many more grievances out here in the community that have gone unaddressed, which permitted and allowed what happened to George Floyd. We just know the truth about what's going on here in Minnesota. There's no way that out of all of those bodies that it was only one man that was guilty. Like, I'm afraid for my life all the time, as I also lost my fiance and the father of my now 14-year-old son, Justin Tigan Jr. Justin Tigan was brutally beat to death by the St. Paul police and thrown inside of a trash dumpster August 19, 2009. When I walked into the mortuary, Justin's skull was cracked in half, so it was split on the right side. His eyes were like punched in. His head was this like big, the size of a basketball or a watermelon. His head was so big. It was clear that a beating had took place. He also had dog bites on his body. He just had lacerations everywhere, bruising everywhere. It was very horrific to see, and that image plays in my mind as I try to mend my life back together and move forward. But after we seen Justin beat up like this, we had questions, because originally when Justin was pulled over, we did not know he got pulled over by the police. They never told us that. They told us that he was in an accident and missing from the scene of an accident. We later found out that he was initially pulled over by the St. Paul police. You know, I'm a young Black girl with a baby, you know, not really knowing what to do. You know, I went from living a normal life like anybody else with the father of my child, my fiance. We getting ready to be married. I have my engagement ring, you know what I mean? We're in the middle of buying a home when he was murdered, and we went from that to literally a nightmare overnight.
We have two objectives in this trial, ladies and gentlemen. The first objective is to give Mr. Chauvin a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin has a presumption of innocence. He is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. We plan to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Mr. Chauvin was anything other than innocent on May 25th of 2020.
I think what people should know is that it wasn't a coincidence that Minnesota has become the byword for systemic injustice. George Perry Floyd Jr. is known throughout the world. Why here? Why now? Because we're in Bryant neighborhood, which was historically a white neighborhood, red line, racial covenants, and yet Mr. Lee bought a house right down the street on 46 and Columbus. And did you know that the white folks in this neighborhood in 1931 all dressed up in their best suits and sat in his yard and threw racial epithets and bottles and bricks at that house because somebody had the temerity to sell a house to a Black person? What people don't understand is that this neighborhood has dealt with over-policing, from the notorious Operation Blood Drive, which took almost an entire generation of Black men out of this neighborhood. This neighborhood had to deal with the gang task force. They were terrorized by the police. They were robbed by the police. That's this neighborhood. Why here? Why now? because we have always been over-policed and over-criminalized, picked on, if you will.
The people in the political seats that have a chance to make change are not reaching out to the hurting families. They're not reaching out to the hurting community. They're not doing their jobs to protect the community. The people that are hurting the community, the police, they want to fund them more. They want to give them more money. If you guys aren't gonna donate money to the actual impacted people, I'm out here like working my butt off for all of our families, and I can't get people like this to donate to the work. But they did this. The people in the political seats that refuse to make changes. How much do you expect the community and the hurting people to take? You keep killing our people for no reason, for no just cause. If your life was not in imminent danger, you weren't supposed to take that person's life.
To continue to apply that level of force to a person proned out, handcuffed behind their back, that in no way, shape, or form is anything that is by policy, is not part of our training, and it is certainly not part of our ethics or our values.
Everybody that has a balloon, we're just gonna release these balloons for justice.
He didn't deserve to die like that. Nobody deserves that. Nobody. And it's been 11 years. And that hunts me. You know, it hunts me to see a human being get killed like that. And I just wanted the truth. Like anybody else that loves somebody would want. I had an entire life planned with him, you know? And they stole that from me.
And I just want you to know that I love you always. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Continue to shine down on me and your son.
Our loved ones was murdered the exact same way, unjustly. Maybe in a different tactic. May not have been the knee on the neck. It might have been gunshots. It might have been a beating. But the unjust part, yeah. I'm just praying that it all comes out.
They murdered my nephew. She killed my nephew. Every pistol, every taser, it has a safety on it. That's murder.
Murder.
Say his name.
Dante Wright.
Say his name.
Dante Wright.
If you continue to violate the curfew order, you are in violation of an unlawful assembly. Please abide by our direction and disperse peaceably. Thank you for your cooperation.
Unbelievable that in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 10 miles from where the Chauvin trial regarding George Floyd was taking place, that a police officer would shoot and kill another unarmed black man.
I balk at putting the onus on 12 jurors to make it a testament about the United States, simply in the same way that America thought they were doing something when they elected Obama. Black folks, brown folks, and indigenous folks were still suffering under his presidency. And whether or not Chauvin gets convicted of murder, manslaughter, or walks, America has work to do. And I'm gonna tell you, every city in America that has black folk will have to undergo a reckoning. Because if any other black person is like this black person, we tired. We so tired that we're now invigorated with spirit. I'm sitting here because I'm standing here, and I'm saying no justice, no street.
So if we don't get it, we gonna shut it down. Because my boots is on the ground. And I will use my hands and my feet and my mouth to do what God has called me to do. And that's to fight for every last one of us.
So even though it hurts and it hurts bad, because I want people to say Justin Tiger name all over the world, just like they do in George Floyd. Miss Ann wants the same for Jeffrey Smith, Cordell Handy, Marcus Golden, Kobe Heiser, Travis Jordan, Demetrius Hill. You know what I'm saying? Hardell Sherrill, Phil Quinn. All of the, Brian Quinones, Isaac Aiden. All of these other murders, we want to hear our loved ones' names too. Jamar Clark, Philando Castillo. But it's okay for me because at least the truth, that's one example. That's one example of the truth. And that's what I don't want them to be able to do, is to isolate this issue. And the world got a chance to see it. And that's what I've prayed for. I've prayed for the truth to come out. And it finally did.
No justice! No streets! No justice! No streets! And we mean that shit!
Please be seated. Members of the jury, I understand you have a verdict.
I know. It's okay. Don't have a panic attack. I'm good. I'm anticipating some word about something, and so I feel really furtive that I'm constantly checking my phone. I want to know when I know it.
There's no way really to describe how I'm feeling, but I am convinced that there's going to be a guilty verdict coming. It is for everyone, including Justin Teagan, who passed away. So when you hear that guilty verdict today, that is for all of our lost loved ones. We've had enough. That is for my baby, Floyd. That is for Dante Wright, my student. That is for Justin Teagan. That is for Jamar Clark. That is for all of our lost ones.
State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, defendant. Verdict, count 1. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict
That's one, we got 2 more! Say it, you son! Derek Chauvin's been found guilty! Yeah! He's been found guilty! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name!
Verdict, count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Verdict, count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like you're making much more of an impact here than you are sitting at home.
Yeah. Well, I hope you consider this teaching too.
You're the best teacher I've ever had simply because you're telling me that I can do something and I can be here and that freedom is real and justice will be served eventually or something. I don't know. I'm so emotional right now.
Yeah, we can get justice. We just gotta give it a little elbow grease.
Yep.
That's it. That's all we gotta do. I'm so glad to see you.
We still have a long way to go. I know that we're going to be supporting the right families. And then we still have to support all of the families that have lost someone. Right. It's not just about George Floyd. This is a victory for all the families that have lost someone.
Every last one of our families deserve justice, and they killed a lot of people in Minnesota before George Floyd, and we want justice for them all.
Department of Justice just did number 3 of the 24 demands, and they are going to investigate the Minneapolis Police Department. But in the meantime, in between time, no justice, no street. No justice, no street.
All right. Rocky, you go first.
Wow. I'm still recovering from that one a little bit. That one actually really moved me. I loved the pace of it. I loved all the different stories that were sewn together. How personal it got. Again, telling the micro story within the big story. I like that there wasn't a lot of graphics, but the ones that were there felt very intentional. Like when they brought up all of the people who had been killed by police in the last, I want to say they did it like the last 5 years, how the list just kept growing. I thought that was a really impactful graphic, more so than it was just informational. I think it also did something to see that list grow in that way. I loved all of it, really. I don't have a lot of critique. The end threw me off. The ending threw me off, how it ended. Something about it threw me off. Like I thought it was over and then it wasn't over, because I was initially going to say that that last scene with her and her student was kind of an odd ending, but then it came back. And then it came back a few more times. So just something about the ending kind of threw me off, but the piece itself is beautiful. I mean, it moved me to tears, literally. Yeah, that's all my critique.
Nathan Thompson.
Yeah, I thought the piece had some really nice like progression and like ups and downs. It started off very intense with like a nat sound open and just intensity, and then it slowed down and got more personal, and then it ramped back up for some more protests. So I think it kept me engaged through all of that, all the ups and downs. That was really nice. And it also, you know, sometimes you can see so much protest footage that it all just blends together. So those dynamics help the protest footage actually have more of an impact. certainly featuring the moment, you know, when the verdict was read, like from ground zero, right where it happened, to see people on that location where George Floyd was killed hear the verdict. You know, I had never seen that, and that was intense to see, and you really felt like all the things that they worked for, you know, and everything that was earlier in the documentary, it was kind of like building up to that point when they could see their work actually paying off in a real way. I love the line, "I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything but be black and be angry." It's thought, you know, it was just that really like showed how it was just all consuming for her and just took over. And then, yeah, the final note, I thought the ending was very strange. I just wrote down weird ending, because it had all these great dynamics. And then it just had this like final moment that was like, I mean, nice, but also just kind of like a little awkward. Like I felt like she didn't really know what to say to the student, and they were just kind of, it was still a sweet moment, but it was just, I feel like they could have ended it better with all that momentum that they had built up, rather than just like letting it trail off into the ending, you know. So
Nice. Priya.
Yeah, I totally agree with Raquel and Nathan about the ending. I was really thrown off by that too. For this one, I thought like the power really lay in some of those interviews and just like how descriptive they were and how personal they were. I'm thinking about the earlier moment when the woman who reps Family Supporting Families was talking about seeing her loved one in the morgue and like all of his injuries and stuff. That was like so intense and descriptive, but like it's like things that you need to hear when you're talking about these issues and you're delving into conversations about these topics. So I thought that was really important. Yeah, I mean, it really like brought all of this to life. So yeah, that was pretty strong.
And Nathan O'Neill.
Yeah, I think it was a really well executed way to look at life in George Floyd Square through the cross section of all these different events as they started to happen throughout the course of, you know, the time that I started working on this piece. And you just kind of see the emotions and the ups and downs for each time there's some injustice. There, to Priya's note, there was that moment whenever they were talking about the woman was talking about her son and all the injuries, and I thought a very tactful way that they were able to show the injuries on him was through her phone instead of having it blasted like on full screen on the screen. I thought that was just like a more respectful and tactful way, because it was like she's letting you in versus we're exploiting it. And then yeah, the ending was a little weird for me. There was a few like loose ends as far as some of the other incidents. I feel like with the Dante Wright shooting, that really wasn't explained or fleshed out. And at the end, then there was the explanation of that ongoing trial, but there's a lot more to that. So I felt like there was some open-ended questions there, just in terms of, you know, just trying to tie that up. So, but overall, I think it was really well constructed, well produced, and effective, kind of leading up to the moment of the verdict. Ending left me a little bit wanting, but what are you gonna do?
All right.